There is a struggle so familiar, so deeply ingrained in our experience, that we often fail to recognize it as a choice. It is the feeling of pushing a great stone up a steep and endless hill, with every ounce of your will, with every straining sinew of your being. You heave against its immense weight. Your eyes fixed on a summit you can barely see. A strange and maddening thing happens. However, the harder you push, the heavier the stone seems to become. The more you sweat and strain and focus your entire mind on the effort, the more stubbornly it resists, grinding to a halt, threatening to roll back and overwhelm you. We have been taught from our first breath that this effort is virtue, that willpower is the sacred engine of success, and that to achieve anything of worth, we must strive for it relentlessly. But what if this fundamental belief, this gospel of effort, is deeply flawed? What if, in the most important arenas of our lives, it is simply and profoundly wrong? Consider the desperate attempt to fall asleep. The more you try to force your mind into slumber, the more it races, a carousel of thoughts spinning wildly in the dark, pushing sleep further and further away. Think of the pursuit of happiness. Chase it like a bounty. Demand it from the world. Try to manufacture it with sheer force of will, and it becomes a fleeting phantom, a shimmering heat haze on a distant road, always just beyond your grasp. Try to be calm when you feel anxious, and the anxiety tightens its grip like a vice. Try to be witty and charming at a social gathering, and you may find yourself becoming hopelessly awkward. Try to force a creative breakthrough, and your mind becomes a barren desert. This is not a series of isolated frustrations. It is the consistent, predictable manifestation of a powerful principle, a law of the human spirit as real and as influential as the law of gravity. It has been called the law of reversed effort, or as the philosopher Alan Watts so elegantly termed it, the backwards law. The law states a simple, and at first, infuriating truth for anything that is meant to be a spontaneous outflow of your being. The conscious effort to produce it will block it. When you try to stay on the surface of the water, your tension makes you sink. But when you allow yourself to sink, your body's natural buoyancy brings you to the surface. This is not a call to laziness or to a life of passive resignation. It is an invitation to a deeper form of intelligence, to a more sophisticated and effective way of living. It is the art of surrender, the science of flow, the sacred practice of allowing. This journey we are about to embark on, this complete audiobook, is a comprehensive exploration of this forgotten law. We will not merely discuss it as a curious idea. We will dismantle it, understand its psychological and spiritual mechanics, and learn to apply it as the most practical tool in our possession. We will learn how to stop pushing the stone, and instead, discover the way of the water, which flows around all obstacles, and inevitably reaches the sea. For within this great paradox lies the secret to unlocking the natural, unimpeded, and effortless flow of prosperity, creativity, and peace that you have been striving so desperately to find. To truly begin our journey, we must first be willing to stand before a very strange door. A door whose sign reads, "Push," but which only opens when you pull. This is the entrance to understanding the backlaw's law, the very heart of the paradox we are exploring. The philosopher Alan Watts, who gave this law its modern name, articulated it with a simple yet profoundly illuminating analogy, that of a person in water. Imagine you cannot swim, and you find yourself suddenly in deep water. Your every instinct screams for survival. Your mind, conditioned by a lifetime of effort and struggle, immediately engages its primary strategy force. You flail your arms. You kick your legs with frantic, despaired energy. You hold your breath. Your muscles tense up like steel cables. Your body becomes a rigid, struggling thing. You are trying with all of your might to stay on the surface, to conquer the water, to force it to obey your will. And in doing so, you inevitably and tragically sink. The very effort you expend to save yourself is what drags you down. The tension in your body makes you dense, heavy. The chaotic splashing spends your precious energy and oxygen. Your panic, born from the effort to survive, becomes the agent of your demise. Now, consider a different approach. Imagine that same person in that same deep water, but this time, they do something utterly counterintuitive. They let go. They exhale. Instead of fighting the water, they surrender to it. They allow their body to become limp, their muscles to relax. They give up the struggle. They stop trying to force a result. In essence, they try to sink, and in that moment of surrender, a miracle of physics and spirit occurs. The body's natural buoyancy, a force that was always present but was being fought against, takes over. They gently, effortlessly, rise to the surface. They float. They discovered that the way to survive was not to fight the water, but to trust it. The way to the surface was through a momentary acceptance of the deep. This is the backwards law in its purest form. The more you consciously and anxiously pursue a result, the more it eludes you. The more you try to grab onto it, the more your fist closes on empty air. For so many of life's most precious states, the attempt to seize them is what ensures they are never possessed. This happens because we commit a fundamental category error in how we approach our own inner world. We mistakenly believe that the same strategies that work in the external, material world will work in the internal, psychological one. If you want to build a wall, effort works. You lay one brick, then another, then another. The more effort you apply, the more bricks you lay, the higher the wall gets. This is a linear, mechanical process. The will is king. But happiness is not a wall. Peace of mind is not a wall. Love, confidence, and creative inspiration are not walls to be built. They are not acts of doing. They are states of being. They are outcomes, not processes. They are the fragrance of a flower, not the act of gardening. You can diligently till the soil, plant the seed, water it, and provide sunlight. But you cannot force the blossom to open with your bare hands. If you try, you will only destroy it. The conscious, striving, effort-filled part of your mind, the part we often call the ego or the I, is a brilliant gardener, but a terrible bully. It can arrange the conditions, but it cannot produce the bloom. When we try to do happiness, or do sleep, or do confidence, we are like a clumsy gardener, grabbing the delicate bud and trying to wrench its petals open, screaming, "Bloom! Damn you!" Bloom, the result is always a torn and broken thing. This is where we must draw a vital distinction. Perhaps the most important one in this entire exploration, the difference between intention and tension. To hear that trying is the problem might lead you to believe that the solution is to want nothing, to have no goals, to drift aimlessly. This is a profound misunderstanding. The backwards law is not a commandment for apathy. It is a guide to effective action. The key is to set a clear intention and then release all tension. An intention is the calm, focused, and trusting act of aiming an arrow. You choose your target. You draw back the string. You align your sight. And with a clean exhalation, you let it fly. The power is in the release. Once the arrow has left the bow, you do not run after it, screaming at it to fly straighter. You trust its flight. You have done your part. And now you allow a larger set of forces, aerodynamics, momentum, gravity to do theirs. Setting an intention is telling your subconscious mind, the infinitely powerful archer within you, what the target is. You impress it upon your inner world with clarity and feeling. And then you let go. You trust the process. Tension, on the other hand, is the desperate, white-knuckled, clinging to the outcome. It is the archer who pulls back the bowstring but refuses to release the arrow, all the while screaming in frustration about why it hasn't hit the target yet. Tension is born from fear and doubt. It is the constant, anxious digging up of a newly planted seed to see if it has sprouted. This frantic energy does more than just feel bad. It sends a powerful, counterproductive signal to the universe and to your own subconscious. It communicates a profound state of lack. It screams, "I don't have this. I am terrified, I will never have this. And I don't trust the process to bring it to me." This energy of grasping, of needing, of desperately trying, creates a psychic resistance that repels the very thing you desire. The great writer Aldous Huxley spoke of this same phenomenon, calling it his law of reversed effort. He observed that the more we desire something, and the more we resolve to achieve it, the less we succeed. His insight points to the psychological trap of focus. When you desperately desire to be calm, your mind becomes hyper-aware of every single jittery sensation, every anxious thought. Your very desire for calmness makes you a connoisseur of your own anxiety, magnifying it under the lens of your attention. The person who desperately wants to be liked at a party will scrutinize every facial expression, every subtle shift in tone from others, searching for signs of disapproval. Their intense desire for acceptance creates a paranoid filter through which they experience the world, guaranteeing they will find the evidence of rejection they fear, even when it isn't there. The effort itself amplifies the problem it seeks to resolve. Let us ground this in a simple, beautiful story. Imagine a young child in a sun-drenched meadow, filled with wildflowers. Suddenly, a magnificent butterfly, its wings a stained glass mosaic of iridescent blue and black, flutters past. The child is captivated. He must have it. He wants to hold its beauty in his hands. And so, the chase begins. He runs, his small legs pumping, his net held out before him like a clumsy weapon. He lunges. He leaps. He crashes through the flowers, his movements filled with the frantic, grasping energy of want. But the butterfly is a creature of the air, a master of effortless grace. It dances. It weaves. It floats just out of reach, its flight seemingly mocking the child's crude efforts. The more he tries, the more he runs, the further away the butterfly seems to go, until it is just a speck in the sky. Defeated, exhausted, and on the verge of tears, the child gives up. The chase is over. He plops down in the middle of the meadow, his net discarded beside him, and he simply is. He stops doing and starts being. He feels the warmth of the sun on his face. He watches the tall grass sway in the gentle breeze. He listens to the drone of the bees and the chirping of the crickets. His world, which had shrunk to the single, frustrating point of the butterfly, now expands to encompass the whole. Beautiful meadow. His inner state shifts from one of frantic tension to one of peaceful, open awareness. And then, a small miracle. The butterfly, no longer pursued, no longer threatened by a grasping energy, circles back. It drifts on the air currents, lower and lower, until with an impossible lightness, it lands gently on the child's still shoulder. The child holds his breath, not in tension, but in awe. The goal was achieved, not through pursuit, but through surrender, not by chasing, but by creating a welcoming stillness. This is the core paradox we must embrace. The backwards law is not your enemy. It is a wise teacher, showing you that the tools of force, will, and effort, while useful for building walls, are utterly useless for coaxing butterflies. To gain control, you must relinquish it. To find what you seek, you must stop searching so desperately. To float, you must be willing to sink. This may feel like a riddle wrapped in a mystery. And in a way, it is. It contradicts a lifetime of conditioning. But, as we have seen, this paradox feels true because we recognize it in our own lives. From the struggle in the swimming pool to the torment of a sleepless night. But simply recognizing a law is not enough. To truly use it, we must understand its inner workings. We must ask why. What is the precise mechanism in the very architecture of our minds that makes this law so powerful and so inescapable? To master this principle, we must first become neuroscientists of our own consciousness and bravely confront the strange and ironic process that happens inside your brain. The moment someone tells you, do not, under any circumstances, think of a pink elephant. So, let us try a small experiment. Right here, right now, for the next 30 seconds, I want you to follow one simple instruction. Whatever you do not, under any circumstances, think about a large pink elephant, wearing a small blue hat, and juggling 3 yellow bananas. You can think about anything else in the entire universe. You can think about the sound of my voice, the room you are in, what you had for breakfast, or the complexities of quantum physics. Just do not allow the image of that particular pink elephant to enter your mind. Go ahead. I'll wait. What happened? If you are like virtually every human being on the planet, the very first thing that appeared in your mind's eye, in vivid, undeniable detail, was a large pink elephant, probably looking rather pleased with itself in its little blue hat, and clumsily juggling its bananas. You may have then tried to shove the image away, to think of a blue car or a green tree, only to have the pink elephant peek out from behind it. The harder you tried not to think about it, the more persistent it became. Do not be alarmed. This is not a failure of your willpower. You have just experienced, firsthand, the core psychological mechanism that powers the backwards law. You have run headfirst into what psychologists call ironic process theory. This frustrating glitch in our mental software was famously explored and named by the late Harvard social psychologist Daniel Wigner. He was fascinated by this universal human experience, the inability to suppress a thought on command. In his classic experiments, he would instruct participants to try not to think of a white bear. He asked them to speak their stream of consciousness aloud for 5 minutes, and to ring a bell every time the forbidden thought of the white bear appeared. The bells rang constantly. The participants were trying their best, but their minds betrayed them at every turn. But the most revealing part of the study came next. Afterwards, Wegner told the same group that they were now allowed to think of the white bear. What he discovered was a powerful rebound effect. This group, which had been trying so hard to suppress the thought, now thought about the white bear far more frequently and obsessively than a control group that had been told to think about the bear from the very beginning. The act of suppression had made the thought more powerful, more magnetic, more sticky. To understand why this happens, we have to understand that we do not have one single, unified mind. When it comes to thought control, we have at least 2 minds working at once, often in direct opposition to each other. Wegner called them the operator and the monitor. The operator is the conscious, effortful, and deliberate part of your mind. It's the doer. When you give it the command, don't think of a pink elephant, the operator gets to work immediately. It starts actively searching for other things to occupy your conscious attention. It looks for distractions. Think about a dog. Think about your to-do list. Think about that email you need to send. The operator is diligent and well-intentioned, but it has a weakness. It requires a lot of energy. It is like a manual laborer, and it gets tired, especially when you are stressed, anxious, or fatigued. Then there is the monitor. The monitor is the unconscious, automatic, and tireless part of your mind. It is the checker. Its primary job is to ensure that the operator is succeeding in its task. And how does it check if you are successfully not thinking of a pink elephant? It has to constantly scan your entire mental landscape, asking one simple, recurring question: are we thinking of a pink elephant yet? To even ask that question, to perform that scan, the monitor must hold the concept of the forbidden pink elephant in its mind. Unlike the operator, the monitor is incredibly efficient. It runs in the background of your consciousness, requiring almost no energy. It is always on, always checking, always vigilant. Herein lies the ironic conflict. On a good day, when you are relaxed and full of mental energy, the strong operator can easily bat away the suggestions served up by the monitor. But what happens when you're stressed about an upcoming presentation, or lying in bed exhausted but unable to sleep? The effortful operator starts to falter. It gets weak. The tireless monitor, however, just keeps on working perfectly. It keeps serving up the forbidden thought, a ghost image from the unconscious. Pardon me. Just checking. Are we anxious yet? Excuse me. Just a quick scan. Are we thinking about how awake we are? Just confirming. Are we worried about saying something stupid? The weakened operator no longer has the strength to push these thoughts away. They break through into your conscious awareness. And suddenly, the very system designed for mental control becomes a relentless engine for obsession. The effort to suppress the thought is precisely what makes it take over your mind. Let's move this out of the laboratory of elephants and bears and into the messy, painful reality of everyday life. Consider the insomniac. They lie in bed, their body exhausted, but their mind buzzing. The command they give themselves is, I must sleep. Do not think about being awake. The operator begins trying to empty the mind, to count sheep, to focus on the breath. But the ever-vigilant monitor starts its work. Are we asleep yet? Nope. Still awake. Eyes still open. Mind is still thinking. What about now? Still awake. The constant self-monitoring for the state of sleep is the very definition of consciousness. The attempt to force unconsciousness paradoxically makes you hyper-conscious of your own wakefulness. The effort creates the opposite of the desired result. Think of the person suffering from social anxiety, heading to a party with the desperate plea, just act natural. Please. Don't be awkward. The operator starts planning, rehearsing witty comments, trying to control their body language. But the monitor is running a constant, terrifying quality control check. Was that comment weird? Did they laugh at me or with me? My hands feel strange. What do I do with my hands? Am I smiling too much? This incessant self-monitoring is the very essence of unnatural, awkward behavior. Authentic, natural connection flows when you are present with the other person, not when you are trapped inside your own head, running a continuous audit of your own performance. The desire to not be awkward is what creates the awkwardness. This vicious cycle is the engine behind so many chronic struggles. The person trying to forget an ex-partner who finds that every attempt to suppress their memory only makes their face appear more vividly. The public speaker who, terrified of blushing, becomes obsessed with the feeling of heat in their face, thereby causing themselves to blush. And perhaps there is no clearer, more tragic example of this principle in action than the professional athlete who develops a mysterious condition known as the yips. Imagine a professional golfer. For 20 years, his putting has been an act of unconscious grace. He doesn't think about how to sink a 3-foot putt. The knowledge is stored in his nerves and muscles. His body knows more than his mind. He is in a state of flow, of trust. Then one day, in a high-stakes tournament, he misses an easy putt. A tiny seed of doubt is planted. The next time, he stands over a similar putt. A new, fatal thought enters his mind. Don't miss this. In that instant, the backwards law is engaged. The ironic process begins. The conscious operator, which was never involved before, now takes over. It starts issuing commands. Keep the wrist firm. Head down. Smooth backswing. It tries to consciously control a process that was designed to be automatic. At the same time, the unconscious monitor starts its insidious scan for failure. Are we going to miss? This feels like we might miss. Careful now. Don't miss. This internal chatter creates microscopic hesitations and tensions in his muscles. The fluid grace of his stroke becomes a jerky, uncertain motion. He misses. The fear of missing has created the miss. The yips have destroyed careers, turning masters of a sport into novices. All because they started trying to do what they once simply did. The insomniac, the anxious party goer, and the fallen golfer are all trapped in the same invisible prison. They are trying to use willpower to solve a problem that willpower only makes worse. They are fighting their own minds. And it is a battle they are mathematically guaranteed to lose. Because the mind's security system is designed to backfire under pressure. The harder you push the suppress button, and the louder the alarm bells ring in your own head. This startling discovery by modern psychology, this mapping of our mind's own civil war, feels incredibly new. And yet, what Daniel Wegner proved in a lab with white bears and ringing bells, ancient sages understood intuitively thousands of years ago. They may not have called it ironic process theory, but they saw the mechanism with perfect clarity. They recognized that the path to inner freedom was never through fighting the mind, but through transcending the fight itself. They gave this state of intelligent, effortless action a name Wu Wei, and it is to this ancient, profound wisdom that we must now turn. If modern psychology has given us a clinical name for the mind's tendency to sabotage itself, ancient wisdom gave us a philosophy for transcending it entirely. We must travel back now, thousands of years, to ancient China, where a school of thought known as Taoism was born. At its heart is a concept so simple in its essence, yet so profound in its implications, that it serves as the ultimate antidote to the frantic striving of the modern world. This concept is called Wu Wei, pronounced Wu Wei. The term is often translated as non-doing or non-action. And this translation is the source of a great deal of misunderstanding for the Western mind. It immediately conjures images of passivity, of laziness, of a quietistic retreat from the challenges of life. But this is not the meaning of Wu Wei. A more accurate and useful translation would be effortless action, or action that does not involve struggle. Wu Wei is not the absence of action, but the absence of friction and resistance in our action. It is the art of sailing rather than rowing. The rower pits his own muscular force against the water, straining and sweating to move his boat forward. The sailor, by contrast, does not fight the elements. She studies the wind. She understands the currents. She aligns her sail to capture the immense, invisible power of nature. And she moves across the water with a speed and grace the rower can only dream of. Both are acting. Both have a destination. But the sailor has mastered the art of Wu Wei. She has aligned her personal will with the great will of the cosmos, what the Taoists call the Tao, or the Way, the central metaphor used in the foundational text of Taoism. The Tao Te Ching is that of water. For the sage Lao Tzu, water is the perfect embodiment of Wu Wei. He wrote, "The supreme good is like water, which nourishes all things without trying to. It flows in places men reject, and so is near to the Tao. Consider the qualities of water. It is yielding. It holds no rigid form. When it meets a rock, it does not smash against it in a futile battle of wills. It simply flows around it, embracing it, finding the path of least resistance without a moment's thought. It is humble. It always seeks the lowest ground, the places of which others feel scorn. And yet, in this very humility, it gathers immense power, accumulating in streams, then rivers, and finally in the vast, unconquerable ocean. And it is persistent, the softest, most yielding substance in the world. Water can wear away the hardest stone, not through a single violent impact, but through a constant, gentle, and patient flow. This is the power of Wu Wei. It is a strength born not of rigidity and force, but of adaptability and intelligent surrender. It is the recognition that the path of least resistance is often the most powerful and effective path to any goal. Perhaps the most beautiful and illuminating story about Wu Wei is that of Cook Ding, a master butcher who worked for the nobleman, Lord Wenhu. The story, from the writings of the sage Zhuangzi, describes the Lord watching, mesmerized, as Ding carves up an entire ox. The process is not one of gruesome labor, but of breathtaking artistry. Every touch of his knife, every twist of his body, is perfectly in time. Like a sacred dance, the ox carcass seems to fall apart on its own, with a sound like whispering silk. There is no crude hacking, no grating sound of the blade striking bone or tough sinew. Astonished, the Lord summons the cook and demands to know his secret. Is this mere skill? He asks. Or is it the Tao itself? Cook Ding lays down his knife and explains, what I care about is the way, which goes beyond mere skill. When I first began cutting up oxen, all I could see was the ox itself. It was a solid mass, a problem to be attacked. This is the state of the novice, the state of most of us as we approach life's challenges. We see the problem as a solid, intimidating block, and we prepare to attack it with brute force. After 3 years, the cook continues, I no longer saw the whole ox. I saw the distinctions, the parts. This is the stage of growing competence. We begin to see the components of the problem, but we are still focused on the solid parts. But now, he says, I go at it by spirit and don't look with my eyes. Perception and understanding have come to a stop and spirit moves where it wants. I follow the natural makeup, striking in the big hollows, guiding the knife through the big openings, and following things as they are. I never touch the smallest ligament or tendon, much less a main joint. This is the master of Wu Wei. He does not see the problem, he sees the solution. He senses the empty spaces, the natural pathways, the joints where things come together and can be effortlessly separated. His knife is not a weapon to attack the flesh and bone. It is a guide that navigates the empty spaces that were always there. A good cook changes his knife once a year because he cuts. Ding explains. A mediocre cook changes his knife once a month because he hacks. I've had this knife of mine for 19 years and have cut up thousands of oxen with it. And yet the blade is as good as though it had just come from the grindstone. There are spaces in the joints, and the blade of the knife has no thickness. If you insert what has no thickness into what has a space, then there's more than enough room to move about. This profound story is a perfect metaphor for living. The ox is any problem, any task, any situation we face in life. The mediocre person, the one who lives by force and effort, sees only the solid mass. They hack at the bones and ligaments of the problem, the points of greatest resistance. They try to force their team to meet an impossible deadline, creating burnout. They try to force their child into a career they do not want, creating resentment. They try to force a relationship to work when it is fundamentally broken, creating misery. They're always hacking, always struggling. And their tool, their energy, their spirit, their will becomes dull and broken. The master of Wu Wei, however, does not see the resistance. They have trained their perception to see the spaces in between. They sense the natural structure of the situation. They find the path of least resistance, not because they are lazy, but because they are intelligent. They know when to push, when to pull, and when to simply wait. They apply the right pressure at the right point at the right time, and the problem seems to fall apart on its own. Their action is so perfectly aligned with the reality of the situation that it feels effortless, Living with Wu Wei today means cultivating this perception. It means before you act, you observe, you listen, you feel the energetic dynamics of a situation. It means developing patience, the ability to wait for the opportune moment. Like a surfer who watches a dozen waves pass by, waiting for the one that is perfectly formed for a long and exhilarating ride. It means practicing your skills, your craft, your communication, your emotional regulation to the point where they become second nature, where you can trust your intuition and act with a grace that bypasses the clumsy interference of the conscious mind. It is letting go of the arrogant belief that you must control every outcome, and instead, embracing the humble and supremely effective role of a skillful participant in the grand, unfolding dance of life. It is the ultimate expression of the Backlaw's law, not as a mere psychological quirk, but as a deep and abiding spiritual philosophy. It is the wisdom of the water, the skill of the master butcher, the grace of the dancer who has become one with the music. It is supreme effectiveness, achieved through supreme ease. This ancient wisdom, this gentle, intelligent call to align with the natural flow, can feel a world away from our modern ethos. In fact, our contemporary culture has constructed a powerful and seductive philosophy that stands in direct and violent opposition to Wu Wei. It is a philosophy that worships the struggle, that glorifies the fight, that tells us that hacking at the bone is not just a method, but an honorable duty. It is the culture of the endless grind, the relentless hustle, and it is to this great modern trap that we must now turn our attention, to see how the rejection of Wu Wei manifests in one of the most consuming and often frustrating areas of our lives, our relentless pursuit of wealth and success. If the ancient wisdom of Wu Wei is the gentle, flowing river, then the dominant philosophy of our modern world is a roaring counterintuitive, attempting to bend nature to its will. Through sheer, unyielding force, we have built a culture that worships at the altar of effort, a global cult dedicated to a single, powerful idea: the hustle. The language of this cult is everywhere. Rise and grind. Thank God it's Monday. Sleep is for the weak. Outwork everyone. We see it in the curated social media posts of entrepreneurs standing before private jets at 5 in the morning, their eyes burning with a mixture of caffeine and evangelical zeal. We hear it in the relentless advice of business gurus who preach that the only variable you can control is your work ethic, and therefore, it must be maximized to the point of self-annihilation. The hustle culture is seductive because it offers a simple, if brutal, promise in a complex and uncertain world that your success is directly proportional to your suffering. It suggests that exhaustion is a status symbol, that burnout is a rite of passage, and that to pause, to rest, is to commit an unforgivable sin against the god of ambition. This entire philosophy is the backwards law in reverse. It is a mass-scale attempt to hack at the bone, and its ultimate consequence is not success, but a deep and pervasive spiritual exhaustion. The core fallacy of the hustle culture is that it is a philosophy of wealth creation built upon a foundational mindset of profound scarcity. The relentless need to grind is not fueled by a love for the work, but by a deep-seated fear. It is the fear that there isn't enough to go around. Fear that if you don't answer that email at 11 p.m., the opportunity will vanish. Fear that if you take a weekend off, your competitor will surge ahead. Fear that your value as a human being is measured solely by your productivity output. This is a worldview of desperation. It sees the world as a zero-sum game, a battlefield where you must take what is yours before someone else grabs it. This scarcity mindset is the very definition of a clenched fist. And as we know, a clenched fist cannot receive anything, it can only punch. And it can only grasp at what it already holds. But it is closed off to the flow of abundance. To escape this trap, we must learn to distinguish between two profoundly different types of action: desperate action and inspired action. The world may tell you that hard work is the key, But it fails to mention that the inner state from which that work originates changes everything. Desperate action feels tight, anxious, and contracted. It comes from a place of, I have to, or I need to. It's the feeling of being behind on your rent, of being driven by fear. The primary focus of desperate action is on what you can get from a situation: the money, the contract, the approval. This energy is palpable. When you act from this place, you are broadcasting a frequency of neediness. Potential clients, partners, and employers can feel it. It makes them uncomfortable. It makes them pull away. When you are desperate, you make poor decisions. You take on the wrong clients, accept bad terms, and compromise your integrity because you are operating from a place of fear, not a place of power. This is the rower, his muscles screaming, his teeth gritted, fighting the current with every stroke, wondering why the shore never seems to get any closer. Inspired action, on the other hand, feels expansive, energized, and often effortless. It feels like play. It arises from a place of I get to, or I want to. It is the natural outflow of your genuine interests, your skills, and your desire to create, to contribute, and to solve problems. The focus of inspired action is not on what you get, but on what you can give. The hard work is often still present. The hours can be long. The challenge is immense, but it doesn't feel like a soul-crushing struggle. It feels like flow. It is the sailor, feeling the wind, adjusting the sails, and moving in harmony with a power far greater than her own. This energy is magnetic. It radiates confidence, authenticity, and a sense of purpose. It attracts ideal clients and opportunities because it is rooted in providing genuine value, not in a desperate attempt to extract it. You are no longer chasing success. You are allowing your authentic expression to attract it as a natural byproduct. This requires a fundamental shift in our metaphor for wealth itself. We are taught to see wealth as a thing to be acquired and accumulated, like building a fortress and filling its vaults with gold. This is a static, scarcity-based model. A more accurate and powerful metaphor is to see abundance as a river. A river is healthy, vibrant, and life-giving only when it is flowing. Money, opportunities, ideas, and connections are all forms of energy that are meant to flow through you, not just to you. If you want to increase the power of a river, you do not build a dam to trap all the water for yourself. Doing so creates a stagnant, dead lake behind the dam and a dry, barren riverbed in front of it. This is the hustle mentality. Dam it all up. Keep it for yourself. The Wu-Wei approach is to understand that to increase the flow, you must widen the channel. You become a better, wider, deeper conduit for value to flow through. You widen the channel by increasing your skills, solving more significant problems, serving more people, nurturing your relationships, and developing a state of being that can gracefully handle and circulate a greater volume of energy and responsibility. Your wealth becomes a measure not of what you have hoarded, but of the amount of value you help to circulate in the world. Let's make this real, with the tale of two salespeople. First, there is Alex. Alex lives and dies by the hustle culture. He wakes at dawn to a blaring alarm, chugs a triple shot espresso, and stares at his monthly sales quota, which feels like a judgment from God. He begins hammering the phones. His mindset is a hunter's. Each potential client is a target. His script is slick, focused on features and benefits, and designed to push past objections and get to the close. His voice carries a subtle but unmistakable edge of anxiety. He's not really listening to the client's problems. He's listening for his opening. He sees them as numbers on a spreadsheet, obstacles to be overcome on the way to his commission. He face constant rejection. which fuels his frustration and makes him push even harder. His desperation growing with every no. He may, through sheer brute force and volume, hit his targets some months. But he is perpetually exhausted. His relationships are purely transactional. And he secretly hates his job. Then there is Brianna. Brianna has rejected the hustle for a philosophy of flow. She starts her day not with a quota, but with a clear intention. How can I bring real value to someone today before she contacts a potential client? She does her research. She seeks to understand their business, their challenges, their goals. When she finally speaks with them, her energy is calm, open, and genuinely curious. She doesn't have a script. She has a conversation. She asks thoughtful questions and listens with the intent to understand, not just to reply. Her primary goal is not to sell her product, but to solve the client's problem. If she genuinely believes her product is not the right fit, and she will say so, sometimes even recommending a better alternative. She is building a foundation of trust, not just trying to close a deal. As a result, the entire dynamic shifts. Clients feel seen and understood. They open up. The sale, when it happens, doesn't feel like a conquest. It feels like the natural, logical conclusion of a helpful partnership. Referrals flow to her without her even having to ask. She works just as many hours as Alex, but her work energizes her. She is not chasing money. She is creating a wide and welcoming channel of value, and abundance flows through it effortlessly. The ultimate symptom of living Alex's life, of constantly hacking at the bone, is burnout. Burnout is not a badge of honor. It is not a sign that you are working hard. It is your body's and your spirit's check engine light, flashing frantically on the dashboard of your life. It is an urgent, non-negotiable signal that you are living in violation of natural law. It is the bill that finally comes due for all the desperate action, all the rowing against the current, all the fear-based striving. It is the logical endpoint of a philosophy that treats a human being like a machine, forgetting that we are organisms that require cycles of rest, reflection, and recovery. It is the body saying, I can no longer sustain this fight, this trap of desperate striving, this seductive and destructive belief that more force is always the answer, is not something we can confine to our careers. It does not politely stay at the office when we go home for the day. It follows us. It seeps under the door and into our living rooms. It quietly and insidiously infects the most delicate and important ecosystem of all the human heart. We take this same frantic, grasping energy that fails us in the marketplace, and we apply it to our search for love, for connection, and for acceptance, only to discover with painful certainty that in the intimate world of human relationships, the backwards law reigns supreme. If the hustle culture is the loud, frantic engine of our professional lives, then its quiet, anxious cousin is the engine that drives our social lives. It is powered by one of the most fundamental and potent of all human desires, the desire to be liked, to be accepted, to belong, to be seen and valued by the tribe. Is a need as primal as food and shelter. It is a healthy, life-affirming instinct, but a strange and painful alchemy occurs the moment this healthy instinct curdles into a conscious effort, the moment the simple desire to connect becomes a desperate, strategic attempt to be liked. The backwards law engages with devastating precision. The very act of trying to win approval becomes the most effective way to repel it. This phenomenon is best understood through a single, powerful word: neediness. We have all felt it, both in ourselves and from others. It is that uncomfortable, grasping energy that makes our skin crawl. But what is it? Really, neediness is not the state of having needs. We all have needs for love, connection, and validation. Neediness is the energetic posture you take when you believe you are incapable of meeting those needs yourself, and you make another person responsible for filling the void within you. It is a vacuum, It seeks to constantly extract approval, attention, and validation from the environment to patch over a fundamental insecurity in one's own worth. People feel this extraction on a deep, intuitive level. It feels like a subtle emotional tax is being levied upon them, as if they are suddenly being made responsible for your happiness. And the universal human reaction to this feeling is to pull away, to create distance, to protect one's own energetic sovereignty. A needy person is, quite simply, exhausting to be around. The engine of this neediness is the same ironic process we explored earlier. The initial thought, "I hope this person likes me," is innocent enough, but it quickly mutates into a negative command. "Don't do or say anything that would make them not like me." This puts your internal monitor on high alert. It begins to scrutinize your every word, your every gesture, your every story. Was that a stupid thing to say? Am I talking too much? Am I not talking enough? They just checked their phone. They must be bored with me. You become trapped in a recursive loop of self-monitoring. And this state is the absolute antithesis of the relaxed, authentic presence that creates genuine connection. You are no longer a person in a conversation. You are a terrified actor on an audition stage. And the performance is stiff, stilted, and deeply inauthentic. When you are trying this hard to impress someone, you are sending out two conflicting signals. The first is the conscious signal, the performance itself. It is the carefully crafted story about your amazing vacation, the quick agreement with their opinion on a film you've never seen, the forced laughter at a joke that wasn't particularly funny. With this signal, you are trying to broadcast the message: I am impressive, I am likable, I am worthy of your attention. But underneath this noisy, effortful broadcast, you are transmitting a second signal, a deeper and far more powerful subconscious one. This is the subtext. By putting on such an elaborate performance, you are implicitly communicating a devastating truth. I do not believe my authentic self is worthy of your attention. The real me is inadequate. So I must present you with this carefully constructed representative instead. I desperately need you to validate this performance, because I am incapable of validating myself. Human beings are masters at reading this second signal. We have evolved over millennia to be exquisitely sensitive to subtext and energetic states. We trust the feeling we get from someone far more than the words they say. The performance feels false, but the underlying neediness feels painfully real. And so, the central paradox is that the attempt to prove your worth is the most powerful way to signal a lack of it. Now, contrast this with the energy of genuine confidence. True confidence is not loud, arrogant, or boastful. That is merely another form of insecurity, another performance. True confidence is a quiet, internal state of self-acceptance. It is the foundational belief that you are enough, just as you are, with all your flaws and quirks. It is the feeling of being at home in your own skin. A person operating from this state enters a social situation with an entirely different agenda. Their goal is not to get approval, but to share their presence and to discover the person in front of them. They are not performing. They are participating. They listen with genuine curiosity. They ask questions because they actually want to know the answers. When they speak, they share their thoughts and stories, not as a way to angle for applause, but simply as an act of self-expression. Their energy is not a vacuum seeking to be filled. It is a generator radiating a stable, welcoming warmth. This makes other people feel relaxed, safe, and interesting. It gives them the implicit permission to drop their own performance and be authentic as well. This is the secret of true charisma. It is not about being impressive, it is about being so real that you invite others into their own reality. Let us watch this dynamic play out in the classic human ritual of the first date. Imagine Mark, who is highly invested in this date going well. He's read all the articles on how to be an attractive man. His internal monologue is a frantic checklist. Make eye contact. Ask her questions, but not too many. Tell the story about the promotion. Don't mention the comic book collection. He is performing the role of impressive, successful man. He agrees with her opinions a little too enthusiastically. He laughs a little too loudly. He is not really listening to what she says. He is waiting for his cue to deliver his next rehearsed line. His date, though she might not be able to articulate why, feels like she is being interviewed. Or worse, being sold something. It feels effortful. There is no flow. Now imagine Sarah. On a différente date. Her internal state is one of open, grounded curiosity. Her intention is simple. I wonder who this person really is. I wonder if we'll have a genuine connection. She asks questions that spring from what he is actually saying. She listens to his answers and allows moments of comfortable silence. When she talks about her job as a graphic designer, she shares not just a success, but also a recent project that frustrated her. Not as a complaint, but as an honest piece of her life. She is not performing the role of cool, creative woman. She is simply being Sarah. Her date feels no pressure. He finds himself relaxing, sharing things he didn't expect to share, and feeling genuinely interested in who she is. He feels seen, not evaluated. The outcome is clear. Mark's date goes home feeling drained and vaguely suspicious. Sarah's date goes home feeling energized and intrigued, already thinking about when he can see her again. Mark's effort created resistance. Sarah's authenticity created connection. This principle extends far beyond the realm of romance. In friendship, the person who tries to buy affection with constant favors or who becomes a people-pleasing doormat, never disagreeing, ends up in shallow, one-sided relationships, often feeling used and resentful. True friendship is forged in the fire of mutual vulnerability and the trust that you can be your real, imperfect self and still be accepted. In the workplace, the employee who is always trying to impress the boss, who hangs on their every word and angles for credit, is seen as a sycophant. The employee who speaks their mind respectfully, collaborates generously, and focuses on doing excellent work from a place of quiet confidence is the one who earns genuine, lasting respect. Our deep need for human connection is the water of life. But the moment we try to grab that water, to force it, to manipulate others into giving it to us through performance and strategy, our hands close on nothing but air, and the water is disturbed. True connection can only ever happen between two authentic selves. It cannot happen between one person and another's carefully constructed representative. The journey, therefore, is not to become more witty, more impressive, or more agreeable. The journey is to become more real. It is to let go of the exhausting, lifelong performance and have the courage to simply be yourself. Trusting that the people who are meant for you will be drawn to that authentic light. This journey requires us to turn our focus inward. For the relationship we have with others is only ever a mirror of the relationship we have with ourselves. And there is perhaps no domain where this internal relationship is more tested, where the tension between forced performance and authentic expression becomes more agonizingly clear, than in the sacred and often terrifying act of creation itself. We must now explore the lonely landscape of the artist, the writer, and the innovator, and confront that great specter born of the backwards law, the creative block. We now arrive at a place of profound and often painful paradox. A silent, brightly lit room, where the only sound is the frantic beating of a single heart against the stark terror of a blank space. It is the writer staring at the blinking cursor on a white screen, a tiny black heartbeat in a vast desert of nothing. It is the painter, brush in hand, paralyzed before the silent judgment of an empty canvas. It is the songwriter, playing the same three chords over and over, hoping to catch a melody that remains stubbornly out of reach. This is the experience of creative block, and it is perhaps the purest and most agonizing manifestation of the law of reversed effort. It is a spiritual and psychological gridlock, a traffic jam of the soul, where the intense desire to create something beautiful becomes the very force that ensures nothing can be created at all. To understand the anatomy of a creative block, we must see it as a direct consequence of the ironic process we explored earlier. The conscious mind issues a powerful, high-stakes command: create something meaningful, write something brilliant, paint a masterpiece. But buried within this noble command is its terrifying shadow, a negative injunction that echoes even louder. Do not, under any circumstances, create something mediocre. Do not be boring. Do not be unoriginal. Do not fail. Suddenly, the creative act is no longer a joyful exploration. It has become a high-wire performance with a jeering crowd waiting for you to fall. The conscious part of your mind, your ego, takes on the role of a tyrannical internal critic. It becomes a harsh judge, standing over your shoulder, scrutinizing every fledgling idea before it can even take flight. Every word you type is immediately weighed and found wanting. Every brushstroke is compared to the master's and deemed inadequate. The critic screams, "Is that really the best you can do? That's been done before. What will people think of this? It's not good enough." This internal environment of high-pressure judgment is lethally toxic to the delicate ecosystem of the creative mind. True creativity, the ability to make novel connections, to play with ideas, to follow associative trails into strange and wonderful territories, flourishes in a state of relaxed, open, non-judgmental awareness. It requires psychological safety. It needs permission to be messy, to be silly, to be wrong. The intense pressure to be brilliant from the outset creates the exact opposite mental state. It induces anxiety, constricts thinking, and shuts down the playful, subconscious part of the brain where the real magic happens. It is like trying to dream on command, or trying to have a deep, vulnerable, and heartfelt conversation while a drill sergeant is screaming inches from your face. The mind freezes. The wellspring of ideas runs dry. The blank page becomes a mirror, reflecting back only our own inadequacy and fear. This is why we must change our relationship with the creative source itself. We must move from a posture of forcing to one of receiving. Our modern, ego-driven culture tells us that creativity is an act of sheer willpower, a manufacturing process where we forge ideas through sweat and effort. The ancient Greeks, however, had a wiser and more psychologically astute metaphor. They believed in the Muses, 9 goddesses who were the divine source of all inspiration in the arts and sciences. An artist did not simply decide to create. They began by invoking the muse, by asking for her blessing, by making themselves a worthy vessel for the inspiration she might choose to bestow. We do not need to believe in literal goddesses to grasp the profound wisdom of this metaphor. The muse is a perfect symbol for the subconscious, the collective unconscious, the Tao, the source of all inspiration that lies beyond the narrow confines of our conscious ego. The ancient artist understood that great ideas were not made, they were found. They were not manufactured. They were received. The artist's job was not to be a brilliant genius who could conjure masterpieces out of thin air. Their job was to be a humble and dedicated servant of the muse. It was to show up to the temple every day, to keep the altar clean, to practice their craft, and to create a space so quiet, so inviting, and so respectful that the muse might be tempted to visit and whisper her secrets. You cannot hunt the muse down, tackle her to the ground, and command her to sing. You can only woo her. So how do we woo the muse in our modern lives? How do we create an inner state that is receptive to the flow of inspiration? The first step, paradoxically, is to stop trying so hard. When you are blocked, when you are staring at the blinking cursor in frustration, the most powerful thing you can do is to walk away. Close the laptop, put the canvas in the closet, step outside. This act of physically removing yourself from the sight of the struggle breaks the ironic loop of effort and failure. The second step is to occupy your conscious mind with a simple, rhythmic, and relatively automatic task. Go for a long walk. Take a shower. Wash the dishes. Go for a drive on a familiar highway. These activities are a form of active meditation. They engage the conscious operator just enough to keep it busy and distracted, which allows the subconscious monitor the part that holds the creative problem to get to work in the background, making surprising new connections without the interference of the internal critic. Countless scientists, writers, and artists have reported their greatest aha moments happening not when they were straining at their desks, but when they were engaged in these simple, mindless activities. This is the crucial period of incubation. You must also change your inputs to get different outputs. Creativity is the art of connecting existing dots in novel patterns. If you keep experiencing the same things day after day, you are just working with the same old dots. You must actively seek new ones. Listen to a genre of music you think you hate. Read a book on a subject you know nothing about, like mycology or the history of shipbuilding. Visit a different neighborhood. Talk to a stranger. Every new experience, every new piece of information, is another dot that your subconscious can weave into a new tapestry. Finally, you must cultivate trust. You must plant the seed of the creative problem in your mind, and then trust your subconscious to tend to it. You have to believe that the work is being done beneath the surface, even when you have no conscious evidence of it. This is an act of faith. There is no more famous or perfect example of this process of reception than the story of how Paul McCartney composed the melody for the song Yesterday. He did not write it in the conventional sense. He dreamt it. He described waking up one morning in an apartment in London with a complete, achingly beautiful melody fully formed in his head. The tune was so perfect, so seemingly complete, that he was utterly convinced he had heard it before. He believed he must have unconsciously plagiarized it from an old song. For weeks, he became a musical detective, playing the melody for friends and people in the music industry, asking, "Do you know this song? What is it?" No one had ever heard it before. It was his. The melody that would become one of the most recorded songs in history did not come to him through struggle or effort. It was not the result of him sitting at a piano, agonizing over chords and progressions. It arrived as a gift, whole and complete. When his conscious mind and his inner critic were in their most dormant and non-judgmental state sleep, he was not the broadcasting station. He was, in that moment, the perfect radio receiver. This is the great secret of the creative life. It is a constant, delicate dance between discipline and surrender. The discipline is in the craft, practicing your scales, learning your grammar, mastering the use of light and shadow so that when the inspiration arrives, you have the technical skill to honor it and give it form. The surrender is in the process, getting your striving ego out of the way, trusting the mysterious workings of your own depths, and allowing yourself to be a humble secretary for the muse. The goal is not to force yourself to be a genius, but to allow the genius within you to speak. This struggle, this dance between the striving ego and the receptive spirit, is not unique to the artist. In fact, artists simply live out a more concentrated and visible version of a battle that rages within anyone who seeks to grow, to evolve, or to transcend their current limitations. We take this same dynamic, the desire for a sublime outcome, clashing with the clumsy, the forceful efforts of the ego, and we apply it to the highest possible human pursuit. We try to achieve peace. We try to attain enlightenment. We try to force a spiritual awakening. And in doing so, we walk directly into the most subtle and profound trap of all, the trap of the spiritual ego. The journey inward, away from the noise of the world and into the silent landscape of the self, is the ultimate creative act. It is the quest to give birth to a new way of being, to sculpt a life of peace and meaning from the raw clay of our own consciousness. And it is here, in this most sacred and personal of endeavors, that the backlaw's law lays its most subtle and devastating trap. It is here that the striving mind, the ego, performs its greatest and most tragic act of self-deception. For the spiritual path is littered with the footprints of those who have tried to storm the gates of heaven, only to find that the act of storming is what keeps the gates firmly locked. The central, maddening paradox of spiritual seeking is this: the very eye that so desperately wants to be enlightened is the final veil that obscures the light. The ego, that persistent sense of being a separate, isolated self in the world, is a master of survival. It is infinitely cunning. When it begins to sense that its usual games, the pursuit of wealth, the hunger for status, the drama of relationships, are being seen through as sources of suffering, it does not simply vanish. It performs a brilliant pivot. It sheds its business suit or its party dress and dons the humble robes of a monk. It co-opts the spiritual search itself, turning it into the most refined and noble-looking game of all. This is the birth of the spiritual ego. The spiritual ego learns the language with astonishing speed. It speaks of mindfulness, presence, non-duality, and awakening. It begins to collect spiritual experiences as if they were trophies for a display case. It says, "I had a profoundly deep meditation yesterday," with the same undertone of pride as someone saying, "I just closed a major deal." It compares its journey to others, thinking, "I am more present than he is," or "My understanding of this text is far more nuanced than hers." This is the phenomenon the great Tibetan meditation master Chogyam Trungpa called spiritual materialism. It is the process of using the tools, practices, and concepts of spirituality to reinforce and decorate the prison of the ego, rather than to dismantle it. The ego has simply found a more righteous and harder to detect way of continuing its lifelong project of self-aggrandizement. Nowhere is this paradox more viscerally experienced than on the meditation cushion. Imagine a person sitting down to meditate. Their stated goal is to be peaceful, to be present, to quiet the mind. This is a noble intention. But immediately, the striving ego turns it into a performance metric. The practice begins. An itch appears on the nose. A memory of an awkward conversation from 5 years ago surfaces. A sudden worry about an upcoming deadline flashes through the mind. The body aches. This is the natural, unavoidable activity of the human nervous system. But the spiritual ego enters as the merciless judge. It declares, "You are failing. A good meditator wouldn't be thinking about emails. A truly spiritual person would be blissfully serene. You are not good at this. You must try harder to be peaceful." And so, the act of sitting quietly becomes a violent internal war. The person is no longer observing their experience, they are fighting it. They are straining to force the mind into a state of silence. They are wrestling with their own thoughts, filled with frustration and self-judgment. All in the name of achieving peace. They are trying to use force to create gentleness. They are using violence to create tranquility. It is a perfect, agonizing demonstration of the backwards law. The frantic effort to find peace is the very activity that shatters it into a million pieces. This struggle is rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of what enlightenment or awakening truly is. The goal-oriented Western mind tends to view it as an achievement, a destination, a glorious mountaintop that must be conquered after a long and arduous climb. We see it as something that is currently absent, something we lack, and therefore something we must attain through heroic effort. The Eastern wisdom traditions, however, offer a radically different perspective. Enlightenment, or liberation, is not something you acquire. It is not something you get. It is a realization of what you already and always are. It is a profound and fundamental shift in identification. It is the recognition of the vast, silent, peaceful awareness that is the very screen upon which all the thoughts, feelings, and sensations of your life have been playing. You have been so focused on the chaotic movie that you have failed to notice the pristine screen that has been here all along. Enlightenment is not about adding anything new to you, not more knowledge, not more special experiences. It is about subtracting something, the false belief that you are the transient, striving, frightened character in the movie, rather than the spacious awareness in which the movie appears. You do not attain it by efforting. You realize it in the cessation of effort. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illuminates this. A young, earnest monk, after years of dedicated practice, approaches the old Zen master. His heart is heavy with the burden of his striving. He bows low and asks the question that has consumed him. Master, I have meditated for thousands of hours. I have studied all the sutras. I have dedicated my entire life to this path. Please, tell me, what more must I do to attain enlightenment? The old master looks at the young monk, his eyes filled with a deep and gentle compassion. He lets the monk's anxious question hang in the silent air of the temple. Then, with a quiet smile, he asks a simple question in return. Who, he says, is preventing you? In this one devastatingly simple question lies the entirety of the teaching. The master is not offering a new technique, another book to read, or a new way to meditate. He is pointing the monk directly back to the source of his own struggle. The only thing standing in the way of the monk's liberation is the I, who is so desperately trying to attain it. The seeker is the source of the seeking. The prison walls are built by the inmate. The veil that obscures the light is the very one who is looking for it. True liberation does not come from a new action, but from seeing through the identity of the actor. It is the realization that the peace you have been seeking is the very nature of the one who seeks. This drive of the spiritual ego also leads to the toxic habit of comparison. It constantly measures its progress against others. It scrolls through social media and sees a yoga teacher in a perfect handstand and feels a pang of inadequacy. It hears a friend speak of a profound insight and feels a flash of envy. This turns the spiritual path, which should be the ultimate act of self-acceptance, into just another competitive sport. It creates a hierarchy of spiritual achievement, fostering all the egoic poisons: pride, envy, judgment, and despair that the path was meant to dissolve. The spiritual journey, then, is the final and most subtle arena for the backwards law. As long as there is a separate you, who is trying to get peace or achieve enlightenment, you are a shadow chasing its own tail. The true path is not one of heroic, muscular effort, but of gentle, courageous, and intelligent letting go. It is a path of subtraction, not addition. It is the art of progressively relaxing the clenched fist of the ego and having the faith to see what remains in the open palm. For what remains, when the striving finally ceases, is the boundless peace that was never absent, only ever overlooked. We have now seen this great paradox at play in our careers, our relationships, our creativity, and our highest spiritual aspirations. The diagnosis is clear: our effort, our striving, our desperate attempts to control and force outcomes are often the very source of our suffering. The remedy, in every case, seems to be a letting go, a relaxation of the will. This leads us to the most crucial, and perhaps most misunderstood, concept on this entire journey. It is a word that can conjure images of weakness, failure, and defeat. But in the context of the Backlaw's law, it is a word of immense power and intelligence. That word is surrender. To move forward, we must first learn what it truly means to give over, not just give up. We have arrived at a critical turning point in our journey, a place where we must confront a word that our modern culture has taught us to fear and despise. It is a word that conjures images of defeat, of weakness, of waving a white flag in the face of adversity. That word is surrender. For a society built upon the gospel of striving, of conquering, of winning at all costs, surrender sounds like the ultimate failure. It is the last thing we would ever want to do. And yet, what we are about to discover is that within this misunderstood and maligned concept lies the very key to unlocking the power of the backwards law. We are here to reclaim this word, to strip it of its false connotations of cowardice, and to reveal it for what it truly is: the highest form of courage, wisdom, and strength. To do this, we must begin by drawing a sharp, bright line between two profoundly different states of being: giving up and giving over. Giving up is an act born of despair. It is the energy of helplessness, of victimhood. It is the exhausted, the bitter sigh of, "I can't do this anymore. It's impossible. Life is against me." When you give up, you collapse. You drop your tools, abandon your post, and let the tides of circumstance carry you wherever they may. It is a closing down of the will, a retreat into powerlessness. It is the rower, defeated by the endless toil, simply dropping his oars and allowing his boat to drift aimlessly towards the rocks. It is an act of disempowerment, giving over, which is the true meaning of surrender, is the polar opposite. It is not an act of weakness, it is an act of supreme intelligence. It is not born from despair, but from a place of profound trust and humility. Giving over is the conscious and deliberate act of saying, "I have done my part. I have applied my skills, my wisdom, and my full-hearted effort to this situation. I have rowed as hard as I can. Now, I will release my desperate, white-knuckled grip on a specific outcome and trust the process." It is not a collapse of the will, but a masterful redirection of it. It is recognizing that you cannot control the wind. So, you stop shaking your fist at the sky and instead, you raise a sail. Surrender is the moment you choose to partner with an intelligence and a power far greater than your own. It is the ultimate act of empowerment. Let us return to our sailor and our rower. The rower's life is one of constant, grinding effort. He faces backwards, looking only at the churning wake of where he has been. His progress is limited entirely by the finite strength of his own muscles. He is in a perpetual fight with the resistance of the water. His journey is defined by toil. The sailor's life is one of grace and cooperation. She stands facing her destination. Her progress is not limited by her own finite strength, but is magnified by the immense, invisible power of the wind. She does not fight the elements, she studies them, understands them, and aligns herself with them. Her journey is defined by intelligence and skill. Both have a clear destination. Both are actively engaged in their journey. But the sailor has made a wiser choice. She has surrendered her own limited power in exchange for access to a limitless one. She has surrendered to the Tao, to the flow of the universe itself. This is not an argument for inaction. This is perhaps the most critical point for the modern mind to grasp. Surrender does not mean you sit on the shore and wait for a favorable wind to blow you to your destination. You still have to prepare the boat, patch the hull, and raise the sail. You still have to learn how to steer the rudder. You still take the actions. You write the book proposal. You build the business plan. You go on the first date. You sit on the meditation cushion. The difference lies not in the action itself, but in the inner state from which the action arises. It is the release of a frantic attachment to the result. The striving mind says, "This business must succeed, or my life has no meaning." This desperate attachment creates fear, anxiety, and a constrictive energy that often leads to poor decision-making. The surrendered mind says, "I will pour my heart, my soul, and my every skill into building this business, because the act of creating it is itself meaningful to me. I will do my absolute best, and I will be excellent." The ultimate outcome, however, is a dance between my efforts and 1,000 other factors I cannot control. I will do my dance, and then I will let go, trusting that whatever happens will be a lesson and a stepping stone. This allows you to act with a profound sense of freedom, creativity, and joy, because your self-worth is no longer chained to a specific, precarious outcome. Imagine a swimmer caught in a powerful riptide. She feels the terrifying, relentless pull of the ocean dragging her away from the safety of the shore. Her every instinct, her every fiber of her being, screams at her to fight, to swim directly against the current, to pit her strength against the power of the ocean. This is the ego's way: meet force with force. So she struggles. She kicks and flails, her heart pounding, her breath growing ragged. But the shore only seems to get farther away. The ocean is infinitely stronger than she is. Her struggle is futile, and it is draining her of the very energy she needs to survive. This path leads to exhaustion and drowning. This is a perfect metaphor for what happens when we try to fight a force in our life that is bigger than we are: a sudden illness, an economic recession, another person's choices. But now imagine the swimmer has been taught the wisdom of surrender. She feels the pull of the riptide and resists the initial surge of panic. Instead of fighting, she consciously relaxes her body. She gives over. She allows the current to carry her, conserving her precious energy. Trusting the process, she knows that a riptide is a narrow channel of water and that its power will eventually dissipate. She floats with it, calmly, until she feels its grip begin to weaken. Now, free from the immediate life and death struggle, she begins to act with intelligence. She starts swimming parallel to the shore, easily breaking out of the current's path. And then, once she is in calm water, she turns and swims safely back to the beach. Her act of surrender was not an act of giving up. It was a profoundly strategic, intelligent, and life-saving maneuver. It was an act of working with a powerful force, not against it. It required immense courage, trust, and the willingness to let go of the ego's desperate need to be in control. So to what, or to whom, do we surrender? The object of your surrender can be framed in whatever way resonates with your own worldview. For some, it is surrendering to God, to a higher power, to the will of the divine. For others, it is surrendering to the Tao, the unseen, natural, unfolding order of the cosmos. For a more secular or psychological mind, it is surrendering to the wisdom of your own subconscious, that deep, intuitive intelligence that operates far beyond the grasp of your conscious ego. Or perhaps, most simply and universally, it is surrendering to reality itself, to the undeniable, non-negotiable isness of the present moment. The specific name is less important than the act itself, the humble and powerful acknowledgement that there is a wisdom and a power at play in the universe that is far greater than your own limited, anxious, striving self. Surrender, then, is not the end of your power. It is the beginning of your true power. It is the moment the rower finally puts down his oars and has the wisdom to raise a sail. It is the moment the swimmer stops fighting the riptide and starts using her intelligence to navigate it. It is the courageous and liberating act of releasing the white-knuckled grip of the ego and placing your trust in the larger process of life itself. It is the ultimate act of empowerment, for it aligns you with the very creative forces that move the sun and the other stars. But this act of intelligent surrender, this raising of the sail, cannot happen in a storm of internal resistance. You cannot trust the ocean while you are cursing the waves. You cannot let go of the oars if you are terrified of the water. Before we can truly surrender to the flow, we must first make peace with where we are, right now, even if it's a place we do not want to be. The foundation upon which the entire temple of surrender is built is a profound and often difficult practice. It is the practice of radical acceptance. To speak of surrender is one thing, but to practice it is another entirely. It is easy to appreciate the wisdom of the sailor who uses the wind, but how do we learn to trust the wind when we are conditioned to believe only in the power of our own rowing? The gateway to true surrender, the fundamental prerequisite for letting go, is a practice so powerful and so counterintuitive that it can change the entire texture of your life. It is the art and science of radical acceptance. At every moment of our waking lives, most of us are engaged in a subtle, low-level war with reality. We are constantly arguing with what is. We wake up to rain and think, it shouldn't be raining today. I had plans. We get stuck in traffic and mutter, this traffic shouldn't be this bad. Someone says something that hurts our feelings and we obsess. They shouldn't have said that. We feel a pang of sadness and the immediate internal response is, I shouldn't feel this way. This constant state of non-acceptance, this argument with the undeniable facts of the present moment, is the primary source of our own suffering. It is an exhausting, draining, and utterly futile struggle. Reality does not care about our preferences. The rain will fall. The traffic will exist. The past will remain exactly as it was. To argue with what is like punching a granite wall. The wall feels nothing. The only thing that gets bruised and broken is your own hand. Radical acceptance. A concept rooted in ancient Buddhist teachings and powerfully articulated in modern psychology, is the conscious and courageous choice to stop fighting this war. It is the practice of seeing reality for exactly what it is, without judgment, without argument, and without wishing it were different. It is looking at the rain and saying, it is raining. It is feeling anxiety and saying, anxiety is present in my body. It is acknowledging a painful past and saying, that happened. It is a simple, clear, and unwavering yes to the present moment in its entirety. Now, it is crucial to understand what radical acceptance is not. It is not approval. Accepting that someone betrayed your trust does not mean you condone their behavior or that what they did was okay. It simply means you are accepting the fact that it happened. It is not passivity. Accepting a difficult medical diagnosis does not mean you will not seek out every possible treatment. It means you are starting from a clear-eyed acknowledgement of the facts on the ground, which is the only sane place from which to plan a course of action. And it is not a form of negative resignation. It is the end of delusion. You cannot effectively navigate a new path until you first accept exactly where you are on the map. Pretending you are somewhere else is a guarantee that you will remain lost. Radical acceptance is the most practical first step towards any meaningful change, because it liberates the vast reserves of energy we waste in futile resistance. There is no better metaphor for this process than the ingenious torment of the Chinese finger trap. Imagine a child who gleefully slides their index fingers into either end of a small, woven bamboo tube. It's a fun little novelty. Then, they decide to take their fingers out. They pull, and as they pull, the woven tube constricts, tightening its grip. A flicker of panic arises. Their instinct, the most natural instinct in the world, is to pull harder. But the harder they pull away from the problem, the more intensely the trap grips them. Their own effort, their own resistance to the situation, has become the very mechanism of their imprisonment. They are trapped by their own struggle. Then, a wise adult might come along and offer a piece of completely counterintuitive advice. Stop pulling. They say, relax your hands. Now, instead of pulling out, I want you to gently push your fingers further in. To the panicked child, this sounds like madness. Why would I move deeper into the trap? But with trust, they try it as they gently push their fingers inward, accepting the trap instead of fighting it. The woven bamboo mesh expands. The pressure vanishes, the grip loosens, and they can now slide their fingers out with ease. This is a perfect physical demonstration of a profound psychological truth. Our life's difficulties, a painful emotion, a difficult relationship, an unwanted circumstance are the finger trap. Our natural instinct is to pull away, to resist, to fight, to say, I don't want this, get me out of here. And this very resistance is what tightens the grip of suffering around us. Radical acceptance is the courageous act of pushing in. It is turning towards the discomfort. It is allowing the unwanted reality to be what it is. And paradoxically, This act of non-resistance is what loosens the hold of suffering and creates the space for skillful movement. Let us apply this directly to the turbulent world of our own emotions, which is often the most difficult place to practice acceptance. Consider anxiety, the moment you feel that familiar tightness in your chest or the racing of your heart. Your first instinct is likely, "Oh no, not this feeling. I have to make it go away." This immediate resistance creates a second, painful layer of suffering. You now have anxiety about your anxiety. You are now fighting a war on two fronts. Radical acceptance offers a different path. It is the choice to turn towards the feeling and simply acknowledge it. Okay, anxiety is here. I feel a knot in my stomach. I feel a tingling in my hands. I feel my thoughts racing. You don't have to like these sensations. You just have to drop the rope in the tug-of-war with them. You allow them to be present in the field of your awareness without judgment. And often, what you will find is that an emotion that is fully accepted and allowed to be, without resistance, will move through you much more quickly. It completes its natural life cycle, like a wave that rises, crests, and dissolves back into the ocean. It is the resistance that holds it in place. The same is true for sadness or grief. Our culture often treats sadness as a problem to be solved. We are told to cheer up, to look on the bright side, to distract ourselves. The instinct is to push the feeling away. But this only causes it to get stuck, to fester in the dark. Radical acceptance is the willingness to honor the reality of your sadness. It is saying, grief is present today. It feels heavy in my body. It is a natural and human response to my loss. I will make space for it. By allowing yourself to feel it without judgment, you allow it to be processed and integrated. You allow yourself to heal. Many fear that if they accept their current reality, they will lose all motivation to change it. If I accept that I'm in an unfulfilling job, won't I just be stuck here forever? The truth is the exact opposite. You cannot create a plan to get to a new city until you first accept the name of the city you are currently in. Non-acceptance is a form of delusion that keeps you spinning in circles. When you radically accept the truth of your situation, I am in a job that does not align with my values, and that is causing me pain. You are not resigning yourself to it forever. You are creating a foundation of clear-eyed, undeniable truth. This is the solid platform from which all effective and intelligent change is launched. When you stop wasting all your energy fighting the fact of where you are, all of that liberated energy becomes available to figure out where you want to go and to start taking the first steps. Radical acceptance is not a passive or weak state. It is an active, courageous, and deeply empowering process. It is the conscious decision to end the futile and exhausting war with what is. It is the wisdom of the Chinese finger trap, understanding that the way out is often through. By saying a full-hearted yes to the reality of this present moment, both within us and outside of us, we reclaim the immense energy we were squandering on resistance. We stop being victims of our reality and start becoming skillful participants within it. This act of accepting reality as it is leads us directly to the next crucial step in our journey of letting go. Once we stop fighting the world, we are confronted with our own deep-seated need to manage, manipulate, and micromanage it. We are confronted by our illusion of control. To truly live in a state of flow, we must not only accept what is, but we must also be willing to gently open the white-knuckled fist that so desperately tries to bend the future to its will. We must learn the profound art of releasing control. If radical acceptance is the act of making peace with the present moment, then our next step is to make peace with all the moments that are yet to come. It is to address the deepest and most persistent of human anxieties, the fear of the unknown. Our entire culture is built upon the worship of a single, powerful illusion, the illusion of control. We build 5-year plans, create meticulous to-do lists, track our data, and hedge our bets, all in a desperate attempt to tame the wild, unpredictable nature of life. We live with our hands clenched into fists, believing that if we can just grip tightly enough to our plans, our expectations, our jobs, and our identities, we can somehow force reality to bend to our will. This chapter is about the supreme courage required to do the opposite. It is about the profound, liberating art of unclenching that fist. Let us be brutally honest about this illusion. Consider the things in your life you truly, actively control. You can control your attitude in this very moment. You can control the effort you put into your next task. You can control your choice of whether to be kind or unkind in your next interaction. That is the list. It is shockingly, humblingly small. Now consider the things you do not control. You do not control the global economy, the weather, the traffic on your way to work, or the mood of your boss. You do not control the thoughts, feelings, or actions of your partner, your friends, or your children. You cannot control the aging of your body, the moment of your birth, or the moment of your death. You cannot control a stock market crash, a sudden diagnosis, or a chance encounter that changes your life forever. This list is virtually endless, and yet, we spend 99% of our life's precious energy trying to manage and manipulate the vast ocean of things we cannot control. And perhaps 1% on mastering the tiny island of things we can. This is the fundamental recipe for a life of anxiety, frustration, and perpetual disappointment. Our suffering does not arise from the fact that we cannot control life. It arises from our persistent, irrational, and exhausting attempt to. Anxiety, in its purest form, is the experience of trying to control the future. The anxious mind is a rogue time traveler, constantly leaping ahead, not to enjoy the view, but to scout for every possible danger. It runs endless simulations of disaster. What if I lose my job? What if my flight is canceled? What if they don't like me? What if I get sick? It believes that this constant worrying is a productive activity. It believes that if it can just anticipate every possible negative outcome, it can create a perfect contingency plan and thereby neutralize the threat of uncertainty. But life, by its very definition, is uncertainty. To live is to be in a state of not knowing what comes next. Therefore, the attempt to eliminate uncertainty is an attempt to stop life itself. It is a futile war against the very fabric of existence. The anxiety you feel is not a warning sign that things are about to go wrong. It is a warning sign that your internal control mechanism is in a state of critical overdrive. This is where we must return to the image of the hand. A clenched fist is a posture of fear. It is tight, defensive, and rigid. It can hold on tightly to the little it possesses, but it is incapable of receiving anything new. A clenched fist cannot accept a gift. It cannot feel the caress of a gentle breeze. It cannot hold the hand of a loved one. It is closed off. This is the posture of the ego, trying to impose its limited will upon the world, believing its own strength is all it has. The open hand, by contrast, is a posture of trust. Yes, it is vulnerable, but it is also receptive. An open hand can give with ease, and it can receive with grace. It can feel the texture of the world. It can connect. It is a posture of abundance, of allowing, of curiosity. It represents the spirit of Wu Wei, not demanding that life conform to a rigid plan, but remaining fluid and ready to respond to what is actually happening. To live with an open hand is a conscious, moment-by-moment choice to let go of the illusion that you are the master of the universe. We are taught to see uncertainty as a threat, as a terrifying void, as a dangerous fog that we must navigate with extreme caution. But this is just one interpretation, and it is a deeply disempowering one. We can choose to reframe uncertainty entirely. What if uncertainty is not an empty void, but a fertile field of infinite possibility? It is the space where anything can happen, including miracles we could never have planned for, synchronicities we could never have engineered, and joyful outcomes far grander than our limited ego could have ever conceived. When our fists are clenched around a rigid plan, we are closed off to these greater possibilities. We might be so focused on following the meticulous map we have drawn that we fail to notice a beautiful, unexpected path that has opened up right beside us. A path that leads to a destination even more wonderful than the one we had imagined. Embracing uncertainty is developing a faith that the creative intelligence of the universe is far more imaginative than our own. It is about being open to pleasant surprises. There is a timeless Taoist parable that perfectly illustrates this wisdom. An old farmer in a small village had a single, prized stallion that he loved dearly. One day, the horse broke out of its corral and ran away into the mountains. The farmer's neighbors all came to console him. "This is terrible luck," they said, shaking their heads. "Your only horse is gone. How will you work your fields?" The farmer simply shrugged and replied, "Maybe." A week later, the stallion returned, and it was not alone. It was leading a herd of 12 wild, magnificent horses. The neighbors, hearing the news, rushed over to congratulate the farmer. "What incredible fortune," they exclaimed. "You are now a wealthy man. This is such good luck." The farmer calmly looked at the herd and replied, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's only son was attempting to train one of the wild horses when he was thrown violently to the ground, and his leg was badly broken. The neighbors gathered once more, their faces grim. "What a tragedy," they lamented. "Your only son, your only help in your old age, is now a cripple. This is truly awful luck." The old farmer looked at his son's bandaged leg and said, softly, "Maybe." A few weeks after that, the emperor's army marched into the village. A terrible war had broken out, and they were conscripting every single able-bodied young man to be sent to the front lines. A battle from which very few were expected to return. They took the sons of all the farmer's neighbors, leaving behind a trail of weeping and despair. But when they saw the farmer's son with his broken leg, they passed him by. The neighbors, their hearts broken, came to the farmer. "You were right to be uncertain," they said. "Your son was spared. Your supposed bad luck was the greatest good luck of all." The farmer, watching the dust from the departing army settle, simply replied one last time, "Maybe." This farmer is a master of the open hand. He understands on a profound level what his neighbors do. Not, you can never truly know the ultimate meaning or consequence of any single event. The chain of cause and effect is far too complex and mysterious for the limited human mind to grasp. What appears today as a disaster may be the seed of tomorrow's blessing. And what appears as a great victory may be the first step towards ruin. His maybe is not a sign of indifference or apathy. It is a sign of supreme wisdom. It is the complete release of the need to label events as good or bad, and the radical acceptance of uncertainty as the fundamental nature of existence. The frantic need for control is an illusion born from a deep-seated fear of this very uncertainty. It condemns us to a life of anxiety and a constant, losing battle with reality. The antidote is to consciously and courageously practice unclenching the fist. It is to embrace the unknown, not as a threat, but as the sacred space of all possibility. It is to learn to live like the Taoist farmer, withholding premature judgment and trusting the vast, mysterious, and intelligent unfolding of life. But this act of opening the hand, of releasing our fierce grip on conscious control, begs a crucial question. If we are not to control things with our striving will, what are we to do? Are we simply to drift? This is where the wisdom of surrender becomes a highly practical and creative act. It is not about abandoning our desires, but about planting them in a much richer and more fertile soil. It is about learning to use the immense, untapped power of the part of our mind that we don't control. The part that works in the darkness, like a fertile field at midnight. We must now learn the art of planting the seed correctly. The art of working with the subconscious mind. If releasing the fist of control is the act of letting go, Our next question must be, let go of what, and into what do we release it? The answer lies in understanding that you possess not one mind, but two. There is the conscious mind, the one you are using to listen to these words. It is the part of you that analyzes, plans, worries, and identifies as I. It is the captain, standing on the deck of a great ship, looking through a spyglass. Then there is the subconscious mind. This is the vast, silent, and unimaginably powerful part of you that lies beneath the surface. It is the engine room, the navigation systems, the thousands of skilled crew members, and the deep, wise sea itself. The great error of our lives has been that the captain, in his anxiety, has been frantically trying to row the entire ship with his own tiny pair of oars, completely unaware of the immense power waiting for his command just below his feet. Learning to use the subconscious mind correctly is the art of putting down the oars, picking up the speaking trumpet, and giving clear, trusting orders to the engine room. The most effective way to understand this relationship is through the timeless metaphor of the gardener and the garden. Your subconscious mind is the garden. It is a field of infinitely fertile soil, miraculous in its power. It is utterly non-judgmental. It will grow with equal vigor whatever seed you choose to plant in it. Plant a seed of a beautiful rose, and it will give you fragrant, magnificent blossoms. Plant the seed of a poisonous nightshade, and it will give you deadly fruit with the same impersonal efficiency. The garden does not distinguish between a good seed and a bad seed. It simply receives the seed you give it and immediately begins the mysterious, silent process of manifestation, working in the darkness, according to its own immutable laws. Your conscious mind is the gardener. The gardener has only two essential responsibilities. The first is to choose the seed with wisdom and to plant it correctly. The second is to tend the soil. That is all. It is not the gardener's job to make the seed grow. The gardener does not possess the miraculous power to create life from a tiny, dormant speck. That power belongs to the garden alone. The gardener is a partner in the creative process, not the source of it. So, how does a wise gardener plant a seed? First, they choose a clear and potent one. Avec désir, like I want to be happy, is a weak, scattered seed that is unlikely to take root. A clear, specific, emotionally charged vision, however, is a potent seed. I see myself walking on a sandy beach at sunset, feeling a profound sense of peace and gratitude in my heart. Is a seed with power. This clarity is the first step. Next, the seed must be planted in a receptive state. You cannot plant a seed in frozen, hard-packed ground. The best times to communicate with the subconscious mind are those moments when the conscious mind is relaxed and the veil between the two worlds is thin just before you fall asleep. Just as you are waking up, or during a state of deep meditation. In these relaxed states, you use the language. The subconscious understands the language of feeling and imagery. You engage in visualization, not just seeing a mental picture of your desire, but stepping into that picture and feeling the reality of it now. What does it feel like to have already achieved your goal? What emotions does it stir? Engage all your senses. This emotionally charged experience is the act of pressing the seed firmly into the fertile soil. And then comes the most crucial and most difficult step for the controlling mind. You must let it go. You must release it. You must, on a conscious level, forget about it. This is the ultimate act of trust. It is the understanding that you have done your job as the gardener. And now you must allow the garden to do its sacred work without interference. Of course, the gardener's job is not entirely over. Now they must tend the soil. This means maintaining a general inner state of faith, trust, and positive expectancy. This is the sunlight and water that nourish the hidden seed, and it means diligently pulling the weeds. The weeds that will inevitably sprout in the garden of your mind are doubt, fear, worry, impatience, and anxiety. When you find yourself thinking, "Is this working? I don't see any results yet. Why is it taking so long? Maybe I'm doing it wrong." You are actively poisoning the soil. This anxious, obsessive energy sends a powerful counter-message to your subconscious. It screams, "I don't actually trust you to do your job. I believe in scarcity and failure more than I believe in you." Every time you worry, every time you doubt, you are like an impatient gardener who digs up the seed to see if it has sprouted. And in that very act, you disrupt and destroy the delicate process of growth. The work, then, is not to force the seed to grow, but to gently and consistently remove the weeds of doubt the moment they appear, and to return your mind to a state of calm, knowing trust. Imagine an impatient gardener. He plants a carrot seed on Monday. On Tuesday morning, he digs it up. Nothing yet. He grumbles and plants it again. On Thursday, he digs it up once more. Still nothing. This is useless. He gets angry. He starts yelling at the soil. He decides it must need more water and floods the patch until it is a muddy swamp. He gets angry at the sun for not being hot enough. He is trying with all his might to force the carrot to grow according to his timeline, and through his conscious effort, the result is painfully obvious. The seed, constantly disturbed and living in toxic conditions, will rot and die. He has destroyed his own harvest with his lack of faith and his desperate need for control. The wise gardener, by contrast, plants the seed with care, provides the appropriate amount of water and sunlight, and then goes about her other chores. She trusts the process. She knows that beneath the surface, a miracle beyond her comprehension is taking place. She has faith that the harvest will appear in its own perfect time, not hers. The subconscious speaks the language of feeling. This is why trying to use brute, conscious logic to change your life often fails. You can stand in front of a mirror and repeat the words "I am confident and powerful" 1,000 times. But if you feel, on a deep level, insecure and powerless, your subconscious will reject the words and accept the feeling every single time. The words are like seeds scattered on hard, rocky ground. The feeling is the fertile soil itself. The real work is to cultivate the feeling, state of your desire fulfilled. Plant the seed of what it would feel like to be loved, to be healthy, to be abundant. Once the subconscious accepts that feeling as its new reality, it will begin to work its magic, subtly altering your perceptions, your intuition, your behavior, and even the opportunities that the world presents to you, all to bring your outer world into alignment with that new inner blueprint. The law of reversed effort, therefore, is not a call for passivity. It is a call for a profound shift in where we apply our effort. It is the wisdom to stop trying to do the work with the small, clumsy, and anxious conscious mind, and to instead give the job to the vast, powerful, and infinitely capable subconscious mind. The conscious mind's new job is to become a master gardener, to choose its seeds with clarity, to plant them with feeling and faith, and then to stand guard over the garden, protecting it from the weeds of doubt and fear. It is a divine partnership, where the conscious mind clearly and lovingly sets the destination, and the subconscious, with its boundless power, masterfully pilots the ship through the mysterious waters of life. This understanding gives us a new framework for action. But what about those times when we are caught not in the slow process of growth, but in an acute, painful loop of negative thought or behavior? Is there a way to use the backwards law as a sharp, targeted tool to break these cycles in the moment? There is. It is a powerful psychological technique, born from one of history's most challenging environments, and it directly harnesses the power of irony. We must now explore the profound and practical wisdom of paradoxical intention. From the fertile soil of the subconscious mind, we now turn to a landscape forged in the harshest fires of human history. To truly understand the power of the backwards law, as a direct and potent tool for healing. We must journey to the concentration camps of Nazi Germany. It was there, in the crucible of unimaginable suffering, that a psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl observed a profound truth about the human spirit. He saw that while everything could be taken from a person, their home, their family, their health, their very name, one thing remained the last of the human freedoms: the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. From these horrific experiences, Frankl developed a school of psychotherapy known as logotherapy, a therapy centered on finding meaning, and within this framework, he developed one of the most brilliantly counterintuitive psychological techniques ever devised: paradoxical intention. Paradoxical intention is a direct, clinical application of the law of reversed effort. Frankl designed it specifically for treating conditions that are fueled by a vicious feedback loop he called anticipatory anxiety. This is, quite simply, the fear of fear. It is the person with a public speaking phobia who is not just afraid of the audience, but is terrified of the possibility that they might visibly show their fear through shaking hands or a trembling voice. It is the insomniac who is not just tired, but becomes terrified of the long, sleepless night ahead. In these cases, the fear of the symptom is what creates and worsens the symptom itself. The more they try not to shake, the more they shake. The more they try to sleep, the more awake they become. Frankl's ingenious solution was to reverse the polarity of the patient's intention. Instead of advising them to fight their fear or to try and calm themselves down strategies that had already failed, he would encourage them to, for a short time, actively and intentionally try to bring about the very thing they feared. Instead of running from the symptom, he taught them to run towards it, to invite it, and even to exaggerate it with a sense of humor. How could such seemingly insane advice possibly work? The technique is a masterpiece of psychological judo, using the mind's own momentum to flip its dysfunctional patterns. Firstly, it completely short-circuits the ironic process we discussed earlier. The command "don't shake" inevitably leads to shaking. But the new command, "try to shake as much as you can," scrambles the entire system. The mind simply does not know how to consciously and willfully produce an involuntary, physiological response like trembling or blushing. The moment you try to force it, the ability to do so often vanishes, the pressure is released, and the symptom subsides. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, it introduces the powerful therapeutic agent of humor. There is something inherently absurd about standing in front of a mirror and trying your absolute hardest to make yourself blush a deep, beet red, or telling yourself you are going to win an Olympic gold medal in hand trembling. This absurdity creates immediate psychological distance. You are no longer the passive, terrified victim of a mysterious symptom. You have become the ironic, playful conductor of it. And as Frankl knew, humor is one of the soul's highest weapons. Fear and a genuine sense of humor cannot occupy the same psychic space at the same time. The humor deflates the fear like a punctured balloon. Finally, paradoxical intention removes the fear of the fear. The patient's core anxiety is that the dreaded symptom will appear against their will. By making the appearance of the symptom their deliberate goal, the fear of its appearance becomes logically impossible. You cannot be afraid of something that you are actively trying to make happen. This dissolves the entire layer of anticipatory anxiety, which was the real fuel keeping the phobic fire burning. In his writings, Frankl shares numerous case studies that demonstrate this power with startling clarity. One of the most famous involves a young doctor who suffered from a severe sweating phobia. For years, he was terrified of breaking into a sweat in social situations. The more he feared it, the more he would sweat, to the point where it was severely impacting his life and career. He had undergone years of conventional therapy to no avail. Frankl saw him for one session. He diagnosed the anticipatory anxiety and prescribed a dose of paradoxical intention. He instructed the doctor that whenever he was in a situation that triggered his fear, he was to deliberately say to himself and to others, "Previously, I only managed to sweat about a quart. But now I'm going to pour out at least 10 quarts. The result was immediate. After just 1 week of practicing this ironic intention, the patient, who had suffered for years, was permanently free of his phobia. He had learned to mock his fear, and in doing so, he had stripped it of all its power. We may not all suffer from clinical phobias, but we all have our own private feedback loops of fear. We can apply this same principle to the common struggles of everyday life. Consider the insomniac. You have been tossing and turning for hours. The desperation to sleep is making you more and more tense and alert. Instead of continuing this futile fight, you can reverse your intention. You sit up, turn on a dim light, and say, "All right, I surrender. My new goal is not to sleep. My new goal for the next hour is to stay awake. I will be the most accomplished stayer-awaker in the history of the world." You pick up a boring book and try to read it. By removing the immense pressure to achieve the goal of sleep, you create the very state of relaxed non-effort from which sleep can naturally and quietly emerge. Or consider the fear of public speaking. You are terrified that your voice will tremble. Instead of fighting for perfect composure, you can set the paradoxical intention: when I get up on that stage, my secret mission is to make my voice quiver with such dramatic, operatic flair that it will move the audience to tears. I will be a master of the tremolo. This playful, humorous inner goal shifts your entire relationship to the fear. You are no longer its victim, but its mischievous co-conspirator. More often than not, the feared symptom, deprived of the oxygen of your resistance, fails to appear at all. This is a technique of immense power. It is psychological judo in its purest form. Instead of meeting the charging force of your fear with a rigid, head-on defense, a battle you are likely to lose, you step aside. You yield. You grab the momentum of the fear itself, and with a light and humorous touch, you flip it onto its back. It is a direct and targeted application of the backwards law, proving that sometimes the most effective way to defeat a monster is to stop running. Turn around, smile, and invite it to dance. It is about fundamentally changing your relationship to your own inner experience, from one of a fearful victim to that of an ironic master. This powerful technique from the world of psychotherapy shows us that by skillfully changing our relationship with our own inner struggles, we can dissolve them. It is a targeted intervention for a specific problem. But what if there were a way to live more consistently in a state where this struggle doesn't even arise in the first place? What if, instead of needing a clever technique to defuse the bomb of anxiety, we could learn to operate in a state where the bomb is never armed? This is not a fantasy. It is a well-documented state of optimal human experience. A place where our skills are so perfectly matched to the challenge at hand that effort becomes effortless, and our sense of self dissolves into the action itself. This is the state that athletes call the zone, and that psychologists call flow. If paradoxical intention is the art of using a psychological counterpunch to disable our fear, then our next discovery is a state of being where the fight never even begins. It is a place where the anxious, striving self simply dissolves, where effort becomes indistinguishable from ease, and where we achieve our highest levels of performance, not by trying harder, but by disappearing into the task itself. You have seen it in the basketball player who cannot seem to miss a shot. Their movements, a symphony of fluid perfection. You have witnessed it in the jazz musician. Eyes closed, lost in a solo, so intricate and soulful it seems to be flowing from another dimension. You may even have felt it yourself. A moment when you were so absorbed in an activity, whether it was gardening, writing, coding, or even a deep conversation, that the world around you faded away. Time became meaningless, and your actions felt utterly spontaneous and correct. This is not a mystical anomaly. It is a well-documented and achievable state of optimal human experience. Athletes call it the zone, and the pioneering psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi gave it a scientific name, flow. Csikszentmihalyi dedicated his life to studying the nature of happiness and optimal experience. Interviewing thousands of people from all walks of life, from surgeons and rock climbers to chess masters and factory workers, he discovered that the most satisfying and memorable moments in their lives were not the moments of passive relaxation, but the moments when they were voluntarily stretching their minds and bodies to their limits in pursuit of a difficult but meaningful goal. This state of complete immersion he called flow. It is the ultimate embodiment of the law of reversed effort, not as a problem to be overcome, but as the very operating system of peak experience. Flow has several distinct characteristics. The first is a complete and total concentration on the task at hand. The spotlight of your awareness is focused so intensely on the present moment that there is no room for anything else. Worries about the past and future simply vanish. Second, there is a clarity of goals and immediate feedback. In a state of flow, you know precisely what you need to do from one moment to the next, and you receive instant feedback on your progress. A rock climber knows immediately if their handhold is secure. A musician hears instantly if the note is true. This creates a seamless loop of action and response. Third, there is a profound transformation in your experience of time. For some, hours can feel like minutes, as the absorption is so complete. For others, in moments of high-speed action, time can seem to slow down, allowing for an incredible perception of detail and control. But it is the deeper characteristics of flow that reveal its true connection to our journey. In flow, the experience is intrinsically rewarding. Or autotelic, you are not performing the activity for some future reward. Like money or praise, the reward is the sheer, unadulterated joy of the activity itself. The action becomes its own justification, and this leads to a feeling of effortlessness and ease. Although you may be performing at the absolute peak of your abilities, it does not feel like a struggle. It feels like you are being carried by a powerful current. Most profoundly, there is a merging of action and awareness. You are not consciously thinking about what you are doing. You are the doing. The mental distance between the self and the activity dissolves. And this leads to the most significant characteristic of all, the loss of self-consciousness. The ego, the internal narrator that is constantly judging, worrying, and commenting on your performance, goes completely silent. The part of you that feels self-conscious, that wonders what others are thinking, simply evaporates. There is only the pure, the direct experience of the action itself. The magic ingredient for entering a flow state is the perfect, dynamic balance between challenge and skill. Imagine a graph where the vertical axis is the level of challenge a task presents, and the horizontal axis is the level of your own skill. If the challenge is too high and your skill is too low, you feel anxiety and stress. If your skill is too high but the challenge is too low, you feel boredom and apathy. Flow exists in the narrow, exhilarating channel right between the two. It is the razor's edge where a task is difficult enough to command your full attention and stretch your abilities, but not so difficult that it becomes overwhelming. To stay in flow, you must constantly be increasing the challenge as your skills improve. It is a perpetual journey of growth. Consider the master surfer on a powerful wave. She does not see the immense wall of water as an adversary to be conquered. She sees it as a dynamic partner to dance with. She has spent thousands of hours in the water, honing her balance, her timing, and her ability to read the ocean's energy. Her skills are incredibly high. The wave, in its power and unpredictability, presents a significant and worthy challenge. As she paddles and catches the wave, the conditions are perfect for flow. Her chattering mind goes quiet. In this moment, there is no her and the wave. There is only the unified, singular experience of surfing. She is not thinking, "Now I must shift my weight to the left." Her body, with its deep, practiced wisdom, simply knows. It responds instantly to the subtle shifts in the water's energy, not with clumsy, conscious commands, but with graceful, intuitive adjustments. She is not fighting the ocean's power, she is one with it, using its immense force to propel her on a ride of pure, exhilarating grace. She is a perfect portrait of Wu Wei in motion. She is the embodiment of flow. In this state, the backwards law is not a paradox to be solved. It is the natural law of the land. You do not try to enter flow. In fact, the moment you become self-aware and think, "Wow, I'm really in the zone right now," is often the precise moment the spell is broken and the state dissolves. The ego has re-entered the picture. You do not try to be happy in flow. A deep sense of contentment and joy is the natural byproduct of your complete absorption. You do not try to be confident. Your skills are so perfectly engaged that confidence is simply the reality of the situation. You do not try to silence your mind. Your mind becomes silent because it is too busy, too engaged, too fascinated to chatter. Flow is the ultimate resolution of the paradox of trying. The wonderful truth is that flow is not reserved for elite athletes or virtuoso musicians. It is a state that is available to all of us. In any area of our lives where we can find that sweet spot between challenge and skill. You can find it in your work by taking on projects that stretch you just beyond your comfort zone. You can find it in your hobbies, whether that is learning a new, complex recipe, playing a more challenging opponent in chess, or trying to master a difficult piece of music. The key is to consciously architect your life to include more of these experiences. This means identifying the activities that have the potential for flow and then creating a sacred, protected space for them. Turn off your phone. Close the distracting tabs on your browser. Create a ritual that signals to your brain that it is time for deep, uninterrupted focus. And most importantly, engage in these activities for the love of the process, not just for the prestige of the outcome. The state of flow is a profound glimpse into a more elegant and powerful way of living. It shows us that our greatest moments of joy and our highest levels of performance often come not when we are striving and straining, but when we are so deeply engaged with life that we forget ourselves entirely. It is a state where the war between the controlling ego and the effortless action ceases. Because the ego has temporarily taken a vacation, it proves that true fulfillment is not found by chasing it, but by aligning ourselves so perfectly with a meaningful task that we become one with its dance. This profound experience of losing the self in the action, of the doer disappearing into the doing, offers us a powerful clue to a more enlightened way of life. The state of flow demonstrates the immense power and joy that comes from simply being the action, rather than consciously doing the action. What if we could take this principle, this feeling of deep immersion and non-resistance that we find in flow, and expand it beyond specific activities? What if we could make it a foundational philosophy for our entire life? This requires a fundamental shift in our orientation, a move away from our culture's obsession with constant action and towards the quiet, powerful, and often overlooked state of simply being. In the architecture of the modern soul, there is a relentless, driving engine. It is the engine of doing. We wake up not to the sun, but to an alarm clock. Its jarring sound, a signal to begin the day's first act of doing. We check our emails before our feet touch the floor. Our minds immediately flooded with tasks, obligations, and problems to be solved. Our days are a frantic blur of productivity hacks, color-coded to-do lists, and back-to-back meetings. We have come to define our self-worth by our output, to measure our lives in achievements checked off a list. Being busy has become a bizarre badge of honor, a way of signaling our importance. If we are not actively doing something, we feel a pang of guilt, a flicker of anxiety, a sense that we are falling behind in the great race of life. This is the disease of doing, and its symptoms are a chronic sense of exhaustion, a feeling of being disconnected from ourselves, and a nagging suspicion that we are always running, but never arriving. To heal this condition, we must understand that doing is only one of two fundamental modes of human consciousness. Its counterpart, a mode that has been largely forgotten and devalued by our culture, is the mode of being. Doing mode is characterized by striving, planning, analyzing, judging, and problem-solving. It is oriented towards the future or the past. It operates in the world of abstract thought, of goals, lists, and comparisons. Its fundamental question is always, what's next? What needs to be fixed? How can I improve this? This mode is essential for navigating the practicalities of life, for building a bridge, for filing a tax return, for planning a trip. It is a powerful and necessary tool. The tragedy is that we have mistaken the tool for the entire toolbox. We have become so identified with the doing mind that we live there exclusively. Being mode, on the other hand, is characterized by sensing, allowing, observing, and accepting. It is oriented squarely in the present moment. It does not operate in the world of abstract thought, but in the world of direct, sensory experience. Its currency is the feeling of the sun on your skin, the sound of birdsong outside your window, the rich aroma of coffee, the physical sensation of your own breath moving in and out of your body. Its fundamental question is not, what's next, but what is here? Now, the being mode does not seek to change the present moment, but to inhabit it fully, without judgment. Crucially, being is not the lazy, unproductive opposite of doing. It is its necessary foundation, the most effective, creative, and inspired action. The kind of effortless action we witness in a state of flow can only arise from a grounded state of being. When we act from a frantic, ungrounded state of pure doing, our actions are anxious, reactive, and often inefficient. We are like a car spinning its wheels in the mud, creating a lot of noise and smoke, but going nowhere. When we first take a moment to connect with a state of being, to ground ourselves in the present moment, to find our center, our subsequent actions become infused with a different quality. They become more intelligent, more intuitive, and more aligned with our deeper purpose. Effective doing is an effortless outflow of grounded being. This is why you cannot do happiness. It is a categorical error. Happiness is not a task to be completed. You can do all the things that you think will lead to happiness. You can get the promotion, buy the house, go on the vacation, and many people achieve all of these things only to find themselves feeling empty. This is because happiness is not an accomplishment. It is a state of being. It is a byproduct that often arises when you are so fully engaged in the present moment that you forget to even ask whether you are happy or not. The same is true for peace. You cannot put "be peaceful" on your to-do list and check it off. Peace is not something you can actively do. Peace is the state of being that remains when you stop doing all the things that create agitation and conflict. It is the silent, still water that is revealed when the frantic stirring finally ceases. Love, too, is a state of being. You can perform loving actions, but the state of love itself is a felt connection, a resonance that cannot be willed into existence through sheer effort. To try and do these states is to ensure they will never arise. It is the essence of the backwards law. To grasp the relationship between these two modes, consider the wisdom of a great tree. A tree is a master of the art of being. A towering oak does not try to grow. It does not have a daily to-do list that says item 1 perform photosynthesis, item 2 grow 1/8 of an inch taller, item 3 produce 3 new acorns. It does not anxiously compare its height to the maple tree next to it, or worry that its leaves are not as green as they were last season. The tree simply and profoundly is a tree. It is fully and completely present in its own existence. It sinks its roots deep into the earth, drawing stability and nourishment. It reaches its branches up towards the sky, open to the light. And from this deep, grounded, and powerful state of simply being what it is, all of its doing happens naturally, rhythmically, and without a shred of anxious effort. It effortlessly converts sunlight into energy. It draws water from the soil. It grows. It provides shade for those who rest beneath it. It creates a home for birds and squirrels. It puts out leaves in the spring and gracefully sheds them in the fall. All of this immense, life-giving activity is an effortless expression of its core identity, its profound state of being. We, as human beings, have forgotten our own nature. We have come to believe we are machines, when in fact, we are far more like trees. We have forgotten that our most powerful and fruitful actions arise not from frantic effort, but from being deeply rooted in the soil of who we are. So how do we practice this? How do we step out of the relentless current of doing and remember how to simply be? The tools are simple, and they are available in any moment. One of the most powerful is the 3-breath pause. At any point in your day, no matter how busy you are, simply stop. Take 3 slow, conscious breaths. On the first inhalation and exhalation, simply bring your awareness to the physical sensations in your body. On the second breath, bring your awareness to the environment around you, noticing a sound or a sight. On the third breath, just notice the simple fact that you are aware. This entire practice can take less than 15 seconds, and yet it can act as a powerful pattern interrupt, pulling you out of the anxious world of thought and grounding you in the direct reality of the present. Another tool is the sensory scan. When you feel lost in thought, stop and consciously engage your senses. Name, either out loud or in your mind, 5 things you can currently see. Then, 4 things you can physically feel: the pressure of the chair beneath you, the texture of your clothes, the air on your skin. Then, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and finally, 1 thing you can taste. This simple game pulls you out of the abstract past and future and anchors you firmly in the rich, sensory reality of the only moment that ever truly exists right now. This shift from a life dominated by frantic doing to one grounded in peaceful being is not an escape from responsibility. It is the pathway to a more effective and joyful existence. By learning to inhabit the present moment, we create a stable inner platform from which our actions can become wiser, more compassionate, and more powerful. We learn to become like the tree, whose most fruitful work is not a product of striving, but an effortless expression of its own deep-rooted, magnificent being. This profound shift is not just a mental or philosophical exercise. It is reflected and powerfully reinforced by the very words we use, the language we choose to narrate our lives, both in our conversations with others and in the constant chatter of our own minds, can either lock us into the prison of striving or open the door to a world of allowing. To solidify this shift, we must now become conscious linguists of our own experience and learn to rewrite our inner dialogue. We must explore the language of allowing. If our state of being is the soil, then the words we use are the seeds we plant in it. Moment by moment, day by day. Language is not passive. It does not merely describe our reality, it actively creates it. The constant, internal chatter of our own minds, our self-talk, is the most powerful and relentless creative force in our lives. It is a series of spells we are constantly casting upon ourselves, either locking us into prisons of struggle and resistance or opening us up to vast, sunlit fields of possibility and grace. To truly shift from a life of effort to a life of flow, we must become conscious wizards of our own inner world. We must learn to rewrite our spells. We must master the language of allowing. First, we must diagnose the old language, the one our culture has taught us so well. It is the language of resistance. Listen for its patterns in your own mind. It sounds like this: I have to go to work. I need to finish this report. I should exercise more. I shouldn't have eaten that. Why is this traffic always so bad? I can't handle all this pressure. Each of these seemingly innocuous phrases is a spell of disempowerment. When you say, I have to, or I need to, you are framing your life's actions as burdens imposed upon you by an outside force. You position yourself as a victim, a reluctant draftee in the army of your own life. The statement, "I have to go to work," carries the energy of obligation, not opportunity. It drains you of vitality before you even begin the task, because it denies your own role in choosing it. When you say, "I should" or "I shouldn't," you are invoking the language of self-judgment. You create an internal war between an idealized version of yourself and the real, human version that exists right now. It is a recipe for perpetual guilt and shame, which are the most ineffective and soul-crushing of all motivators. The question, "Why is this happening to me?" is the classic anthem of victimhood. It presupposes that you are a passive target of life's whims. It seeks blame rather than understanding, and it locks you into a state of powerlessness, waiting for an external force to save you. And the declaration, "I can't," is the most definitive and heartbreaking spell of all. It is a locked door, a brick wall, a final proclamation that closes off all possibility before the journey has even begun. The language of allowing offers us a new set of spells, a new vocabulary of empowerment and grace. It is not about lying to yourself or engaging in false positivity. It is about subtle but profound shifts in perspective that completely alter your energetic state. Instead of saying "I have to," you can make the shift to "I choose to" or "I get to." Watch what happens to the energy of the same action. "I have to go to work" becomes "I choose to go to work because I value providing for my family and contributing my skills." Suddenly, the action is not a burden. It is a conscious choice, rooted in your own values. Or even more powerfully, "I get to go to work." A phrase that acknowledges the immense privilege of having health and opportunity that so many in the world lack, instead of the judgmental whip of "I should." You can open up to the gentle curiosity of "I could," or "I wonder what it would be like if." The thought, "I should exercise more," which is laden with guilt, becomes, "I could go for a walk this afternoon and enjoy the feeling of moving my body." Or "I wonder what it would be like if I felt more energized and strong." This transforms a moral obligation into a curious experiment. It replaces the critic with the scientist, and it invites you into action rather than shaming you into it. The powerless question, "Why is this happening to me?" can be transformed into the powerful and expansive question, "What is this situation here to teach me?" or "What opportunity for growth is present here?" This single shift changes your identity from victim to student. It presupposes that life is not happening to you, but is happening for you, for your own evolution and learning. It restores a sense of agency and purpose, even in the midst of great difficulty. And the dead end of "I can't" can be transformed into the open road of "I am in the process of learning how to." The statement, "I can't figure out this new software," becomes, "I am in the process of learning this new software." This acknowledges the current challenge without making it a permanent statement about your identity or capabilities. It turns a wall into a staircase. Let us see how this plays out in a common human struggle: the desire to improve one's health. A person operating from the language of resistance lives in a state of constant internal warfare. Their mind sounds like this: "Ugh, I have to stick to this horrible diet. I can't eat that dessert. It's forbidden. I should have gone to the gym yesterday. I'm so pathetic. Why is this so hard for me?" This language is filled with deprivation, self-punishment, guilt, and resentment. The entire process feels like a prison sentence. Every food choice is a battle. Every craving is a moral failure. This person is fighting against themselves. And that is a war they are almost certain to lose, often ending in a cycle of rebellion, binging, and shame. Now, consider a person who consciously adopts the language of allowing. Their inner world is one of partnership and self-care. Their mind sounds like this: "I choose to nourish my body with delicious foods that make me feel vibrant. I allow myself to feel satisfied and energized after I eat. I could go for a hike this weekend. I wonder what trail I'd enjoy. What is my body asking for right now to feel good?" This language creates feelings of empowerment, curiosity, and self-love. The journey is not a punishment, but an act of profound self-respect. The focus is on what is being gained: health, vitality, joy, not on what is being lost or forbidden. This person is not fighting a war. They are cultivating a garden, and their success is far more likely to be sustainable, joyful, and lasting. This is not merely a mental trick. These linguistic shifts create a tangible change in your body's energetic and physiological state. The language of resistance: have to, should, can't activates the sympathetic nervous system, the body's fight or flight stress response. It creates tension, releases cortisol, and constricts your focus. The language of allowing: choose to, could, am open to activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's relaxation response. It eases tension, calms the heart rate, and expands your sense of possibility. When you are in this open, relaxed, and receptive state, your very perception of the world changes. You notice solutions you would have missed in your state of constriction. Your intuition becomes clearer and more reliable. You have creative ideas that seem to come from nowhere. You literally begin to experience a different reality, because you have altered your own energetic frequency to be able to receive it. So I invite you, for the next 24 hours, to become a gentle detective of your own inner language. Don't judge it. Don't try to force a change. Simply notice. Notice every time the words "I have to," "I need to," "I should," or "I can't" appear in your thoughts. Notice how they make your body feel. And then, just once or twice, playfully and with curiosity, try swapping one of them for its more allowing counterpart. See what shifts. See what new feeling, however subtle, arises. This is how the change begins. Not with a violent overthrow, but with a gentle invitation. Our words are wands, constantly casting spells that shape our existence. The language of resistance is a powerful spell of struggle, limitation, and scarcity. The language of allowing is a spell of grace, possibility, and flow. By becoming the conscious author of our own inner dialogue, we transmute the lead of our struggles into the gold of our wisdom. And when you begin to consistently change your inner world in this way, a strange and wonderful thing begins to happen. Almost as if by magic, the outer world begins to respond in kind. You start to notice meaningful coincidences. The right person calls at the right time. You stumble upon the exact book you need to read. It feels as though the universe itself is conspiring to help you, leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for you to follow. This is not your imagination. This is the phenomenon of synchronicity. And it is the universe's direct response to your new state of flow. Have you ever had one of those days? Or perhaps a week, when life just seems to effortlessly click into place? You think of an old friend you haven't spoken to in years, and a moment later, your phone buzzes with their name. You are wrestling with a difficult problem, feeling completely stuck. And then you open a book at random, and the exact answer you need is staring up at you from the page. You have a quiet, heartfelt desire for a new opportunity. And then you overhear a conversation in a coffee shop that leads you directly to it. These moments feel magical, like a secret conversation is taking place between you and the universe. They are more than just luck. They are more than mere coincidence. They are glimpses into a deeper order of reality. A sign that you have momentarily aligned yourself with a powerful, invisible current. The great Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung gave this phenomenon a name: synchronicity. Jung defined synchronicity as a causal connecting principle. It is the experience of two or more events which are seemingly unrelated by any conventional cause and effect, yet are connected by a profound and undeniable meaning. It is not that one event caused the other, but that they are participating in a single, meaningful pattern. Jung's classic example occurred during a therapy session. His patient was describing a powerful dream she had had about a golden scarab beetle. As she was telling him the dream, Jung heard a gentle tapping at his window. He opened it, and a large, Scarab-like beetle flew into the room, an insect quite rare for that climate. The dream and the beetle were not causally linked, but their meaningful co-occurrence at that precise moment was so powerful that it broke through the patient's rational defenses and led to a major therapeutic breakthrough. This is the essence of synchronicity. It is a wink from the universe, a nod from the Tao. It is the external world arranging itself in a pattern that reflects your internal state, confirming that you are on the right path. But how does this happen? Is it truly magic? The answer lies in a beautiful interplay between the mystical and the psychological, between the nature of the universe and the nature of our own perception. When you are living in a state of resistance, anxiety, and effortful control, the state of the clenched fist, your entire energetic field is constricted. You are broadcasting a frequency of fear and scarcity. But when you begin to practice the principles we have discussed, when you surrender, when you accept what is, when you speak the language of allowing, your inner state shifts. You move from the constricted energy of fear to the open, expansive energy of trust. You are, in essence, changing the radio station of your being. The universe, which is a vast and intelligent field of energy and information, begins to resonate with your new frequency. Opportunities, people, and resources that are in harmony with this state of trust and flow are naturally drawn into your experience. Just as turning your radio dial to 98.7 FM allows you to receive the signal being broadcast on that specific frequency. But there is a second, more psychologically grounded explanation that works in perfect harmony with the first. When your mind is cluttered with the constant noise of worry, planning, and trying to control everything, your perception of the world around you is incredibly narrow. You are living inside your own head. You don't notice the subtle cues, the quiet opportunities, the serendipitous connections that are all around you. The book with the answer you need may have been on that shelf for weeks, but you never saw it because you were too busy worrying about your problem to look up. The person who could become your perfect business partner may have been at that same coffee shop every morning, but you never noticed them because you were frantically answering emails on your phone. Trapped in a state of doing. When you shift into a state of being, which of open and allowing awareness, your perception sharpens dramatically. You become more present. You see more. You hear more. You are no longer blinded by the fog of your own internal struggle. You begin to notice the subtle web of connections that surrounds you at all times. The synchronicities, then, are not necessarily the universe creating new events just for you, but are often the result of you finally being open and aware enough to perceive the magical, interconnected reality that was always there, waiting patiently for you to notice. Let us imagine the story of an aspiring entrepreneur named Clara. Clara has a brilliant idea for a new business, an app that connects local artisans with a wider market. Her initial approach is pure hustle. She works 18-hour days, fueled by caffeine and fear. She creates a 50-page business plan, cold calls 100 investors with a tight, desperate energy in her voice, and tries to force her vision into existence. The result is a series of rejections, mounting stress, and a crushing sense of pushing a boulder uphill. The universe feels silent, hostile, and uncooperative. Exhausted and on the verge of giving up, Clara stumbles upon the idea of the backwards law. She decides to try a completely different approach. She puts away the business plan and stops the frantic calls. For a whole weekend, she does nothing but get clear on her deeper why. She reconnects with her passion for art and community. She creates a vision board, not with spreadsheets and projections, but with images that evoke the feeling of her business thriving, the happy faces of the artisans, the beautiful products, the sense of a connected community. She plants this seed in her subconscious. And then, for the first time in months, she truly lets go. She shifts her intention from, "I have to make this work at all costs," to, "I am open to discovering the most joyful and aligned path for this vision to come to life." Then, the synchronicities begin. The next week, feeling a strange intuitive nudge, She decides to work from a library across town instead of her usual coffee shop. As she's looking for a book on an unrelated topic, a different book seems to fall off the shelf into her path. Its title is The Gentle Art of Community Building. Inside, it details a cooperative funding model she had never heard of, one that is a perfect fit for her vision. A few days later, she gets an email from a former colleague she hasn't spoken to in years, who just wants to catch up. In the course of their conversation, the colleague mentions that her sister is a software developer specializing in e-commerce platforms for artists, and she's looking for a passion project. The connection is made with zero effort. That weekend, at a local farmer's market, she strikes up a conversation with a potter who happens to be the unofficial organizer for a large network of local artisans who have been dreaming of a better way to sell their work. One by one, the pieces of the puzzle begin to assemble themselves around her. She is not pushing. She is being guided. The right people, the right resources, and the right ideas are appearing. Not because of her desperate striving, but because of her clear intention and her open, receptive state. You can learn to become a magnet for synchronicity in your own life. The process begins with clarifying your intention, knowing what you want, but holding that desire lightly. Without a desperate grip, it requires the daily practice of letting go, of doing your part with excellence, and then releasing your attachment to a specific outcome. It means learning to listen to and follow the subtle intuitive nudges you feel throughout the day, the sudden urge to call someone, to visit a certain place, to read a certain article. And when a synchronicity does occur, it is vital to acknowledge it with a sense of gratitude and wonder. This positive feedback loop, noticing the magic and giving thanks for it, reinforces your trust in the process and invites even more of it into your life. Synchronicity is the external world holding up a mirror to your internal state of alignment. It is the tangible evidence that you have successfully shifted from a life of rowing against the current to a life of sailing with the wind. These meaningful coincidences are the reassuring whispers of the universe, confirming that you are on the right path and that you are a beloved and supported part of a much larger, intelligent whole. They are the beautiful, sparkling signposts of the flow state made manifest in your life. But the path of flow is not always a series of happy coincidences and fortunate encounters. Sometimes, the river takes a sharp turn, and we find ourselves adrift, not in a current of magical happenings, but in a vast, quiet, and deeply unsettling stillness. It is a place where there are no signs, no clear direction, and no obvious next step. This is the void of not knowing, and our ability to navigate this fertile emptiness without panic is one of the most crucial tests of our trust in the process. The path of flow is not always a sunlit river of joyful synchronicities. There are times when the current slows, the landscape widens, and we find ourselves adrift in a vast, silent, and unnerving expanse of water. There is no clear direction. The signposts have vanished. The intuitive nudges have gone quiet. This is the experience of the void, the liminal space, the great in-between. It is the frightening pause that follows the end of a job, a relationship, or a major life chapter. A time when our old identity has dissolved and a new one has not yet taken form. Our culture teaches us that this state of not knowing is a problem to be solved, a vacuum to be filled as quickly as possible. But according to the wisdom of the backwards law, this emptiness is not an error in the system. It is an essential and exquisitely fertile part of the process itself. The conscious mind, the ego, has a deep and primal abhorrence of emptiness. The ego defines itself by knowing, by doing, by having a clear purpose and a solid identity. When it is confronted with a void, a lack of a clear next step, it panics. It perceives this stillness not as peace, but as a threat to its very existence. And so, it scrambles to fill the silence with noise. This scrambling takes several familiar forms. Sometimes, it manifests as frantic, anxious worry, the mind begins to run endless catastrophic simulations, creating terrifying what-if scenarios simply to have something to chew on. Because for the ego, the torment of a known fear is preferable to the terror of the unknown. Other times, it takes the form of premature planning. We try to force a new 5-year plan into existence, to choose a new career path, to jump into a new relationship, all without any genuine clarity or inspiration, simply to have a direction, any direction, to move in. And most commonly, we try to numb the profound discomfort of the void with distraction, endless hours of scrolling through social media, binge-watching television, or using food, drink, or shopping to create a temporary feeling of fullness. All of these are acts of resistance. They are the desperate attempt to pave over the fallow ground before it has had a chance to rest and regenerate. To navigate this space with wisdom, we must reframe it entirely. Think of a farmer and his field. A wise farmer knows that he cannot force the earth to produce crops indefinitely. After a harvest, the soil is depleted. It needs a period of rest, a fallow season, where it is left alone to lie under the sun and the rain, to replenish its nutrients, to allow the complex life within it to rebalance itself. To force another crop onto a tired field is to guarantee a weak harvest and, eventually, to turn the fertile ground into barren dust. The voids in our lives are these necessary fallow seasons for the human soul. They are sacred periods of rest, integration, and replenishment. It is in this stillness, this quiet emptiness, this state of non-doing, that the seeds of our true intentions, the ones we planted in the subconscious, have the undisturbed darkness they need to finally germinate. Our frantic efforts to fill the void are like the foolish farmer constantly stomping and tilling his fallow field, ensuring that nothing new can ever take root. There is no more powerful metaphor for this process of transformation than the miracle of the chrysalis. Consider the life of a caterpillar. It is a creature of pure doing. Its entire existence is defined by a singular, linear purpose: to crawl, to eat, to consume, to grow. It is a master of accumulation. Then, at a certain point, a mysterious inner impulse that it does not consciously understand compels it to stop everything. It finds a branch, hangs itself upside down, and constructs a protective shell around itself. It willingly enters the void. What happens inside the chrysalis is not a peaceful, tidy renovation. It is a complete and total existential meltdown. The caterpillar's body, its entire form and identity, dissolves into a nutrient-rich, primordial soup. It is a process of absolute disintegration. The creature that was a caterpillar ceases to exist. It becomes nothing. All that remains of its former self are a few tiny, highly organized clusters of cells called imaginal cells, which have been dormant within it all along. These cells hold the genetic blueprint for the butterfly. And then, from this liquid chaos, a miracle occurs. The imaginal cells begin to work. They use the soupy, dissolved energy of the old caterpillar self as raw material to build something entirely new. They construct wings, antennae, a delicate proboscis. From the creature of the earth, they fashion a creature of the air. But this breathtaking transformation is only possible because the caterpillar had the courage to endure a period of complete dissolution, of absolute not knowing. If it had tried to cling to its caterpillarness inside the chrysalis, if it had resisted the process of melting down, it could never have become a butterfly. The void is the crucible of rebirth. The fallow periods of our lives are our chrysalis moments. They are terrifying, disorienting, and essential. To navigate them, we must learn to trust the process of our own becoming, even when it feels like we are falling apart. The first step is to give the state permission to exist, to name it, to say to yourself, I am in a fallow period. I am in the chrysalis. It is a time of not knowing, and that is okay. I don't need to have the answers right now. This simple act of naming and allowing can diffuse a tremendous amount of panic. This is the time to lean heavily into the practices of being, not doing. The goal is not to frantically search for the answers to what's next. The goal is to simply be with the question. This means taking long, aimless walks in nature. It means listening to music without doing anything else. It means practicing mindfulness of your senses, grounding yourself in the direct, physical reality of the moment. While you should avoid creating new, stressful goals, a gentle, simple routine can provide a comforting sense of structure, a regular wake-up time, a cup of tea in the same chair each morning, a daily 10-minute stretching practice. These simple anchors can keep you from feeling completely adrift. Most importantly, you must learn to listen to the quiet. The void is not truly empty, it is just free from the usual noise of the ego. And in this profound silence, you can begin to hear the much more subtle whispers of your own deep intuition. The voice of the emerging butterfly. The clarity you seek will not come from a frantic pro and con list. It will arise gently from the stillness. As a quiet knowing. As certitude. An inspired idea that feels true and right. Finally, throughout this process, you must practice a radical self-compassion. Acknowledge that this is a vulnerable and often frightening place to be. Treat yourself with the same kindness, patience, and tenderness you would offer to a dear friend who is navigating a major life transition. You would not tell them to just get over it or figure it out. You would offer them your quiet, loving presence. You must learn to offer the same presence to yourself. The void of not knowing is not a sign that you have taken a wrong turn or that your life has stalled. It is a sacred and fertile phase in the natural cycle of all growth. It is the deep, dark soil of winter that must precede the vibrant bloom of spring. It is the stillness of the chrysalis that is the absolute prerequisite for the flight of the butterfly. By learning to trust this emptiness, to rest in it with patience and grace, we allow the most profound work of transformation to occur in the depths of our being. We allow the blueprint of our future self to emerge, not from force, but from faith in the fertile darkness of the unknown. This profound trust in the natural cycles of life, in the wisdom of rest and the power of non-resistance, applies not only to our psychological and spiritual lives, but also to the very ground of our being, our physical bodies. For too long, we have treated our bodies like machines to be controlled and forced into submission. We fight their signals and ignore their wisdom, only to wonder why they break down. But the body, like the Taoist farmer, possesses a deep, intuitive intelligence. The body knows, and it is to this innate wisdom of our physical selves that we now must turn, to explore how the principles of flow and allowing can lead to healing, rest, and true well-being. We have journeyed through the mind, through the spirit, and through the great, mysterious voids of our own becoming. Now, we bring this exploration home to the most tangible reality we will ever know, our own physical body. For too long, we have been conditioned to treat our bodies not as wise and living allies, but as unruly machines to be disciplined, controlled, and forced into submission. We see our bodies as vehicles that we pilot, separate from our true selves, and we become frustrated when the vehicle sputters, breaks down, or fails to perform to our exact specifications. We have declared war on our own biology, and we wonder why we feel so sick and tired. The truth is that the body, like the Taoist farmer, possesses a deep, ancient, and intuitive intelligence. The body knows, and applying the law of reversed effort to our physical well-being is not just a good idea. It is the very foundation of true and lasting health. Consider the process of healing. When we receive an unwanted diagnosis or suffer an injury, our first instinct is often one of fear, which quickly translates into a desire to fight the illness. We will beat this, we say. We will wage war on this disease. And while the intention is one of courage, the energy of frantic, fearful fighting can be profoundly counterproductive. This state of anxiety and stress activates the body's sympathetic nervous system, the ancient fight-or-flight response. It floods our system with hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which are designed for short-term survival. But when this state becomes chronic, as it does when we are constantly worrying about our health, it begins to break the body down. It suppresses the immune system, inhibits digestion, and prevents cellular repair. The paradox is that the desperate, fearful effort to get well creates a state of internal stress that actively hinders the body's own miraculous ability to heal itself. The alternative is to shift from fighting to allowing. This does not mean giving up on treatment. It means embracing the treatment from a different state of being. It is a state of radical acceptance of the diagnosis, combined with a deep and abiding trust in the body's innate wisdom. This state of trust and relaxation activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest and tend and befriend system. This is the state where true healing occurs. It is the state where the immune system functions optimally, where inflammation is reduced, and where the body can devote its precious energy to regeneration and repair. You cannot force your body to heal. You can only create the optimal conditions for healing to occur. And the most fundamental of those conditions is a deep state of peace and relaxation. There is no more perfect day, or more maddening example of the backwards law in a physical context than the experience of insomnia. The bed, which should be a sanctuary of rest, becomes a nightly torture chamber. The insomniac's mind is consumed by one single, desperate goal: I must fall asleep. This very effort is what guarantees wakefulness. The desire to achieve the unconscious state of sleep makes one hyper-conscious of every sound, every thought, every passing minute on the clock. It is the perfect trap, as we have learned. The only way to escape this trap is to surrender. The goal must change. The goal is no longer to fall asleep. The new goal is simply to rest comfortably. This means giving up the fight. It means saying to yourself, I am not going to try to sleep anymore. For the next hour, my only job is to lie here and be as comfortable as possible. You can then practice techniques that induce the relaxation response, not as a trick to force sleep, but for their own sake. You can do a body scan, bringing your attention to your toes and consciously inviting them to soften. Then your feet, then your ankles, and so on, slowly moving up your entire body. You are not commanding it to relax, you are gently inviting it. Or you can use paradoxical intention. You can decide that your new goal is to try and stay awake. You can try to keep your eyes open. In releasing the pressure to achieve the goal of sleep, you create the very conditions of relaxed non-effort from which sleep can naturally and gracefully arise. Not as a prize you have won, but as a gift you have received. Let us imagine the story of a man named David who has suffered for years with chronic back pain. In the beginning, he treated his pain as an enemy. He waged a full-scale war upon his own body. He tried aggressive physical therapies that pushed him past his limits and often left him in more pain than before. He took powerful painkillers that dulled his senses but never touched the source of the problem. He consulted with surgeons about risky procedures. His entire life was organized around this fight. He was constantly tense, physically and mentally bracing himself against the next spasm, the next jolt of pain. Of course, this chronic tension in his muscles and nervous system only served to perpetuate the cycle of pain. His world had shrunk to the size of his suffering. After years of this futile war, exhausted and disheartened, he meets a wise mindfulness teacher who suggests a radical new strategy: stop fighting. David is taught, for the first time, to turn towards his pain, not with aggression, but with a gentle and courageous curiosity. Instead of bracing against the sensations, he learns to breathe into them. He practices a body scan, not to fix the pain, but simply to get to know it. What is its exact texture? Is it sharp or dull? Is it hot or cold? Does it have a center? Does it move? He is not trying to make it go away. He is simply allowing it to be there, holding it in a space of non-judgmental awareness. This is the turning point. By ceasing his resistance, the secondary layer of his suffering, the fear, the anger, and the tension about the pain begins to dissolve. As his mind stops fighting, his nervous system begins to calm down. For the first time in years, his muscles begin to unclench. He learns gentle stretches that are about listening to his body's limits, not forcing them. He is no longer at war. He has, in essence, signed a peace treaty with his own body. And in this new state of profound relaxation and acceptance, the body's own innate healing mechanisms are finally able to do their work. The inflammation begins to subside. The circulation improves. The pain does not vanish overnight, but its power over him, its ability to dominate his life, is broken. He gets his life back, not by winning the war, but by having the wisdom to end it. This points to a larger truth: our bodies are constantly speaking to us, but we have forgotten how to listen. We impose rigid, one-size-fits-all diets upon ourselves, ignoring our body's own subtle signals of hunger, satiety, and how different foods actually make us feel. We force ourselves into punishing exercise routines that we hate, believing that pain is the only path to progress, instead of discovering joyful forms of movement that our body craves. And we relentlessly override our body's clear signals of fatigue with stimulants and sheer willpower, treating rest not as an essential and productive part of the cycle of health, but as a sign of weakness. The practice, then, is to cultivate what is known as interoception, the ability to feel and interpret the internal landscape of your own body. It is the practice of pausing throughout the day and asking, what does my body need right now? And then having the wisdom and self-respect to listen to the answer. The body knows. Its fundamental impulse is always towards balance, towards health, towards what the ancient physicians called the vis medicatrix natura, the healing power of nature. Our job as conscious minds is not to bully this intelligence into submission, but to become its sensitive and respectful partner. Our physical well-being is not a battle to be won. It is a relationship to be nurtured. And the foundation of this relationship, the bedrock of all health, healing, and rest, is not more effort, more striving, or more control. It is a state of profound relaxation, of deep trust, and of graceful cooperation with the immense wisdom that already resides within our very cells. This journey through healing our relationship with our bodies, our minds, and our very lives reveals a common thread: the need to let go of force and embrace a gentler, more allowing approach. But this itself can become another source of striving. We can start trying to surrender perfectly, to accept radically, or to flow flawlessly. The ego can take these beautiful concepts and turn them into yet another impossible standard we fail to meet. To protect ourselves from this final, subtle trap, we must embrace one last, crucial piece of wisdom. We must learn to find the beauty and liberation in our own human fallibility. We must explore the grace of imperfection. We have journeyed far, exploring the powerful currents of flow that move beneath the surface of our lives. We have learned to surrender, to accept what is, and to trust the fertile darkness of the unknown. And yet, there is one final, subtle trap that the striving mind can lay for us on this very path. It is the trap of trying to do it all perfectly. It is the quiet, anxious voice that whispers, "Am I surrendering correctly? I tried to accept my feelings yesterday, but I failed. I'm not flowing flawlessly enough." The ego, in its infinite cunning, can take the very teachings of letting go and transform them into a new, impossible standard to achieve. It can turn the path to freedom into just another performance. This is the ultimate form of striving, the ghost in the machine of the backwards law. It is the tyranny of perfectionism. Perfectionism is not, as our culture often suggests, the healthy and noble pursuit of excellence. Excellence is a joyful, internally motivated process of becoming better. Perfectionism is a fear-based belief system, rooted in the crippling thought that if we can just live perfectly, look perfect, work perfectly, and be perfect, we can somehow avoid or minimize the painful human feelings of shame, blame, and judgment. It is a suit of armor that we believe will protect us, but which in reality only suffocates and paralyzes us. The perfectionist writer cannot write a single paragraph because she is terrified it will not be the perfect paragraph. The perfectionist meditator becomes filled with agitation at every stray thought because he is failing to have a perfectly silent mind. The perfectionist partner tries to create a flawless relationship, avoiding all conflict and difficult conversations, only to build a connection so brittle and inauthentic that it eventually shatters. Perfectionism, at its core, is a tragic refusal to be human. It is a declaration of war against our own nature, because the human experience is, by definition, a messy, vulnerable, and beautifully imperfect one. This is the meta-trap of our journey, applying the law of reversed effort to the law of reversed effort itself. You cannot try to surrender. You cannot force yourself to allow. The anxious effort to be perfectly accepting is just a more sophisticated form of non-acceptance. The desperate desire to flow flawlessly is just another kind of resistance. The goal, then, is not to achieve a perfect, unbroken state of non-striving. That is just another peak to be conquered by the ego. The true practice is to be imperfectly surrendered. It is to be clumsily accepted. It is to notice, with a sense of gentle humor, that you have once again been caught in the trap of trying. And then, without judgment, to simply let go again, and again, and again, for the rest of your life. The practice is not the attainment of a perfect state. The practice is the gentle, compassionate act of returning. There is a profound and beautiful Japanese art form called kintsugi, which offers a powerful metaphor for this wisdom. Kintsugi means golden joinery. When a cherished piece of pottery, a tea bowl, a vase, a plate is broken, it is not discarded in shame. It is not even repaired in a way that tries to hide the damage. Instead, a master craftsman painstakingly reassembles the broken pieces, and in the final step, they highlight the cracks. The seams are joined with a special lacquer that is then dusted with shimmering powdered gold. The result is an object that is considered more beautiful, more valuable, and more precious because it has been broken. The golden lines do not hide the scars, they illuminate them. They tell the story of the object's history, its resilience, its journey through damage and repair. The philosophy of kintsugi embraces imperfection as an integral and beautiful part of an object's life, not a mark of its failure. We are that pottery. Life, with its inevitable challenges, will bring its cracks. We will make mistakes. We will fail. Our hearts will be broken. Perfectionism is the attempt to live as an unbreakable bowl, a futile and anxious endeavor. Or worse, it is the attempt to hide our cracks and shame when they inevitably appear. The kintsugi path is the path of self-compassion. It is the courage to see our own breaks, our wounds, our flaws, and our imperfections not as things to be hidden away, but as the very lines that give us our unique character, our depth, and our strength. Self-compassion is the golden lacquer. It is the gentle, loving process of mending ourselves, not by erasing our history, but by honoring it. The most practical antidote to the poison of perfectionism is the cultivation of this self-compassion. The pioneering researcher Dr. Kristin Neff identifies 3 key components. The first is self-kindness. This is the practice of learning to speak to ourselves with the same warmth, tenderness, and encouragement we would naturally offer to a dear friend who was struggling, instead of the harsh inner critic that says, "You're so stupid for making that mistake." The voice of self-kindness says, "That was a really difficult situation, and you did the best you could with the resources you had at the time. It's okay to be imperfect." The second component is a sense of common humanity. Perfectionism thrives on a feeling of isolation. The belief that I am the only one who is this flawed. A sense of common humanity reminds us that suffering, failure, and inadequacy are intrinsic parts of the shared human experience. To be imperfect is simply to be human. Everyone you know struggles. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone feels like a failure at times. Realizing this breaks the isolating spell of shame and connects you to the vast family of humanity. The third component is mindfulness. This is the ability to observe our negative thoughts and feelings from a balanced and open perspective, without either suppressing them or getting swept away by them. It is the understanding that you are not your mistake. You are not your flaw. You are the vast, spacious awareness that is able to notice the thought about the mistake or the feeling of failure. This creates a sliver of space, and in that space lies our freedom. By combining these three elements, we begin to release ourselves from the tyranny of the impossible ideal. We find freedom and ease in the concept of good enough. This is not a call to mediocrity. It is a call to sanity. It is the freedom to send the good enough email instead of agonizing over every word for an hour. It is the freedom to have a good enough workout when you don't have time for a perfect one, knowing that it is infinitely better than no workout at all. It is the freedom to be a good enough parent, partner, and friend, knowing that true connection is built on the foundation of authentic, messy, human reality, not on a flawless performance. It is in the realm of good enough that most of life's joy, peace, and progress is actually found. Perfectionism is the final, shimmering ghost of the striving mind. It presents itself as a noble pursuit, but it is a beautiful, gilded cage that promises safety but delivers only paralysis. The path to a flowing, effortless, and joyful life is not paved with the demand for flawlessness, but with the grace of embracing our own beautiful, resilient, and deeply human imperfection. Like a kintsugi bowl, we are not more beautiful in spite of our cracks. We are more beautiful because of them. They are the golden evidence of a life fully lived, a story of survival, a map of our own becoming. And self-compassion is the art of tracing these precious lines with gold. By embracing the grace of our own imperfection, we remove the final barrier to a life of ease. We have journeyed through the mind, the heart, the body, and the spirit. We have learned to let go of control, to surrender, to accept, and to flow. We have gathered all the necessary tools and cultivated the essential mindsets. The final step is to integrate these lessons, not as a series of separate techniques to be applied in moments of crisis, but as a seamless, coherent, and joyful daily philosophy. It is time to learn how to live the Wu-Wei life. Our journey is now approaching its destination. We have traveled through the labyrinth of the striving mind, witnessed the elegant wisdom of the ancients, and gathered the practical tools of modern psychology. We have diagnosed the core paradox of the backwards law, unmasked the ego in its many disguises, and explored the profound release that comes from surrender, acceptance, and flow. But these concepts are not meant to be a collection of interesting ideas to be stored on a mental shelf. They are living principles, designed to be woven into the very fabric of our daily existence. The final step is to move from understanding the theory to living the philosophy. It is time to integrate all that we have learned and to truly begin living the Wu-Wei life. To live in a state of Wu-Wei, or effortless action, is not to master a new and complex technique. It is a fundamental shift in perception, a new orientation to reality. It is the recognition that the backlaw's law is not a frustrating glitch, but a guiding principle, that surrender is not weakness, but intelligent strength. That acceptance is not passivity, but the foundation for wise action. That flow is not a rare accident, but our natural state when the ego gets out of the way. And that self-compassion is not an indulgence, but the essential oil that keeps the entire engine of our being running smoothly. When these are no longer separate concepts, but interconnected facets of a single, coherent worldview, we begin to live differently. Let us imagine what a day lived from this philosophy might feel like. The morning does not begin with the jarring shock of an alarm clock and the immediate, anxious rush to check a phone full of demands. It begins gently. It begins with a moment of quiet presence before the doing begins. A simple acknowledgement of the gift of a new day. Instead of launching into a frantic mental to-do list, the Wu-Wei practitioner might set a simple, feeling-based intention. Not, I must get these 10 things done, but today, I choose to move with a sense of ease. Or my intention today is to listen deeply. Or I will be a source of calm for myself and others. This sets a tone, not a series of rigid targets. It is the tuning of an instrument before the music begins. Throughout the day, the core practice is not to force a state of continuous, blissful flow, but to simply and gently notice when you have fallen out of it. The primary signal is the feeling of friction, of resistance, of forcing. You feel it when you are trying to force a solution to a problem that isn't ready to be solved. You feel it when you are trying to force a conversation to go a certain way. You feel it when you are pushing your body past its limits. This feeling of tension is your internal compass, your guide. The old way was to ignore it, or to push even harder. The Wu-Wei way is to recognize it as a signal. When you feel that friction, the practice is to simply pause. Take a single conscious breath and deliberately relax your grip. You don't have to solve the whole problem. You just have to release the tension in that one moment. It is a constant, gentle, compassionate series of course corrections, not a violent battle for control. In your interactions with others, you begin to operate from the mode of being, not just doing. You enter conversations with a sense of open curiosity rather than a hidden agenda. You find yourself listening more and speaking less. Like cookting, sensing the gaps in the ox. You become more sensitive to the spaces in a conversation, to the energy behind the words, to what is not being said. This allows you to respond to the reality of the person in front of you, rather than reacting to your own projections. And when challenges inevitably arise, a difficult project, a conflict with a loved one, an unexpected setback, your first instinct is no longer to attack the problem with brute force. The first step is to pause and observe, to ask, what is the true nature of this situation? Where is the energy already flowing? What is the path of least resistance? You learn to wait for an inspired action, one that arises from a place of calm clarity, rather than launching a reactive action born from fear and panic. At the end of the day, you release the habit of anxious mental accounting, of replaying every mistake and planning tomorrow's battles. Instead, you can cultivate a practice of gratitude, not a forced list of things you think you should be grateful for, but a quiet recollection of any small moment of ease, of genuine connection, of beauty, or of flow that occurred during the day. This simple practice trains your mind to see the grace that is already present, and it reinforces your trust that this same grace will be available to you tomorrow. It is a gentle closing of the day, a return to a state of being. Let us conclude with one final story. Imagine two hikers setting out to climb a beautiful, majestic mountain. Both have the same goal: to reach the summit. The first hiker is a man of pure striving. He is obsessed with the destination. His eyes are either fixed on the distant peak or glued to his GPS device, tracking his progress. He sees the mountain as an adversary to be conquered. Every steep incline is a source of frustration. Every loose rock is a personal annoyance. He barely notices the breathtaking views that open up behind him, the scent of the pine trees on the wind, or the sound of a distant waterfall. He is so trapped in his mind, in the world of goal-oriented doing, that he is completely disconnected from the reality of the journey. He pushes himself relentlessly, ignoring his body's signals for rest and water. He does, eventually, reach the summit, but he arrives utterly exhausted, gasping for breath. And his dominant feeling is not joy, but a grim relief that the struggle is finally over. He immediately begins to worry about the arduous journey down. The second hiker is a woman who walks the Wu Wei path. She, too, has the clear intention of reaching the summit, but her approach is entirely different. She understands that the purpose of the journey is not just to arrive at the destination, but to experience the journey itself. She walks with a steady balance, relaxed rhythm. She feels the solid earth beneath her feet with each step. She pauses frequently, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom, to drink her water and to turn and drink in the magnificent, unfolding vistas. She listens to the wind as it whispers through the trees. She is in a state of joyful, present moment communion with the mountain. She is not fighting it, she is dancing with it. When she feels tired, she rests without judgment, because she is relaxed and aware. She is more likely to spot the elegant switchback path that the striving hiker missed. She also arrives at the summit, but her experience is one of exhilarating fulfillment. She is energized. Her heart is full, and she looks forward to the journey down with the same sense of gentle, curious présence. Both hikers reach the goal, but one's journey was a battle, and the other's was a dance. The striving mind sees life as a series of problems to be solved and battles to be won. It is a fundamentally adversarial relationship with existence. The Wu Wei mind sees life as a piece of music to be danced to. You don't win the dance. You don't conquer the music. You listen to its rhythm. You feel its flow. And you respond with skillful, joyful, and graceful movement. The Wu Wei life is not a distant, esoteric ideal reserved for sages in mountain caves. It is a practical, moment-to-moment choice available to all of us. It is the choice to end the feudal war with reality and to become its willing and skillful partner. It is the wisdom to know when to act and when to allow, when to hold on and when to let go. It is the conscious decision to live with an open hand, a curious mind, and a trusting heart. It is the path of the sailor, the master butcher, the wise farmer, and the joyful hiker. It is the journey from effort to ease. We have now walked this path together. From the initial diagnosis of our struggle to the ancient wisdom and modern techniques that offer a way through, we have gathered the insights and the tools. All that remains is to consolidate our understanding, to distill the essence of this profound journey, and to step forward into our lives, not with a new set of rules to follow, but with a new sense of freedom to embrace. Our journey began with a single and familiar image, the exhausting and futile struggle of pushing a great stone up an endless hill. We began in a state of striving, convinced that our effort was the only thing keeping us from rolling backwards into failure. We have traveled far since that moment. We diagnosed the nature of our struggle, giving it a name, the backwards law, the ironic process of the mind that turns our effort against us. We sought wisdom in the ancient Taoist concept of Wu Wei, the art of effortless action. We saw this struggle mirrored in our modern culture's obsession with the hustle, in our anxious need for approval in relationships, in the paralyzing fear of the creative block, and in the subtle trap of the spiritual ego. And then, we began to learn the art of letting go. We discovered that surrender is not weakness, but strength. That acceptance is not passivity, but power. We learned to release the illusion of control, to trust the fertile void, to listen to the wisdom of our bodies, and to find the profound grace in our own imperfection. We have walked the path from striving to arriving, from effort to ease, and now, at the end of this path, we find a truth that is both simple and life-altering. The goal was never to push the stone to the top of the hill. The goal was to realize we were never meant to push the stone in the first place. The great work of our lives is not to apply more force, but to release our resistance. True power is not found in the clenched fist of control, but in the open hand of intelligent allowance. The peace, the joy, the love, and the abundance that we have been so desperately striving for are not prizes to be won in a battle with life. They are the natural atmosphere of a soul that has ceased its inner war. They are the inevitable byproducts of a life lived in flow. The river is always flowing towards the ocean. It does not require our frantic effort to propel it. Our only task is to stop building dams, to stop throwing rocks into the current, to remove the debris of our own fear and doubt, and to allow the great, wise current of life itself to carry us home. So I leave you with this. The immense burden of having to figure everything out, of having to force every outcome and control every variable, is not yours to carry. You can lay it down. The key to the life you desire is not found in adding more effort, but in subtracting the resistance. It is not a new struggle to be undertaken, but an old one to be abandoned. As you move forward from this moment, I invite you to carry with you not a new set of rules, but a new sense of permission. The permission to be imperfect, the permission to not know, the permission to rest, and the permission to trust. From time to time, ask yourself this one gentle question. In what area of my life am I still pushing the stone? Where am I still fighting the current? And in that place, just for a moment, what would it feel like to simply let go?